Please hit like, share, and subscribe. Now enjoy the Practical Guitarist podcast. All right. So, okay. We've got the clap.
There's a couple of them.
There's a couple of clap in there. Do you have the clap or some clap? I don't know. It's a thing. You look. I was polishing my guitars earlier. Look where I left my rag.
Yeah, I know.
I left it right on the Les Paul. I was like, yeah, fuck. The other one's sitting behind the Aerodyne. See it?
Yeah, I don't really polish mine. I like when I take them down to play them, then I wipe them off, and it's like whatever. But
yeah, I've got the so as you saw, the SG is sitting here. I was actually getting ready. You told me to record over something I'm not used to, so I took a funk track. I took a like a soul. They call it a soulful funk or something.
Yeah, and that's a good track to thing to start with because it's a groove and it's all about the groove, you know.
Yep. And so it's like a and it's kind of like what we were watching.
I played to that track before, so
I'm sure
I'm doing this, and I have a couple that come into mind, and I'm like, yeah, I remember that one.
So speaking of those tracks, I reached out to because it came from what is it, Elevated Jam Tracks, right?
Yeah,
and I figured I'd throw them a few bucks because hey, they're not going to keep creating Elevated Jam Tracks if.
Well, they're getting paid by views too. You forget that that's kind of their stock and trade is like if you
yeah, but if you want to use their jam track like I'm going to put
right, if you want to use it for some sort of that's right, because we're gonna have to license it, right
to be able to play it. And they said if you buy the tracks, then you automatically get a license, and you get literally hundreds of tracks. You don't just buy 2 or 3. But I asked them, I said, look, because they've got like entire the entire list, like you can get all of the light blues, dirty rock, whatever.
right.
And they're like $20 a piece or something. I'm like, yeah, I'll just pay for it. And I'll get 700 freaking tracks or 1,000 tracks. Jeez.
Yeah.
So, and I think in all, there's like 1,700, 1,400 tracks. There's a lot of tracks. There's so many, it doesn't really matter. I mean, once you get over 1,000, who cares? You're never going to play to 1,000 tracks. But now you own licensing to use them, right? So I wrote to the guy and I said, look, if I buy all of your compilations, do I get any kind of a break on it? And are those compilations everything so that I know, hey, if I find this track online, I can find that track in your track.
Yeah.
I never got a response, so I don't know if he's not really interested in the sale of them anymore or something. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think it's all that big a deal with them, and it's an automated sales process, and they figure people are going to buy them by the individual. And
yeah, I'm just going to buy the whole.
Never bought tracks and played to them like that, so I never really run into that. In fact, when you said licensing, I was like, what the hell are you licensing? Oh, that's why, because we're going to use it on the show. That's something we typically end up doing. So
right, and so I'm thinking I'm gonna buy the compilations anyway. It's like $70 for everything,
right?
And so that's like or $60, and it's 3 of them.
Yeah, that's not much.
So it's not enough money to worry about. But I was just curious if it was everything, and if I could get a couple of bucks off. So there's that. As you know, I've got car trouble, so I'm not going out much. So I'm not spending any money. It's even getting easier not to spend money. Although Funko had, it was Funko week last week, and my son's like, Dad.
It's a fake holiday.
And he goes, yeah, it was a fake holiday all week. It was 7 days of Funko. So he's like, Dad, this one came out. So we purchased, we both ordered, there's a Superman that's got a reproduction of Action Comics, kind of like the AC/DC one that I bought. There's another AC/DC. I purchased that one. I pre-ordered actually. It's in July or something. It's coming. It's Angus Young with Highway to Hell in the background, and then there's they've only done one Hendrix. Do you know how much the Hendrix Funko Pop goes for?
Oh, it's probably insane
Yeah,
because
it's close to
Hendrix controls all
$1,000.
the licensing of the Hendrix Family Partnership controls all the
Well,
licensing of that.
it's not just that right now because it's in the used market only. They only did it once. I guess the family.
Right, that's what I'm saying. They only allowed it to be done once, which is why the one that's out there is like astronomical
It's
because
like
it was only done
$1,000.
once. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It's crazy. Or $700. It's super expensive. I mean, it gets up there with like the 10-inch #1 Batman and all
Yeah,
this other stuff. It's crazy. And it's really one of the only rock ones that sells. I've got the Rush one that's worth like $200 because of the passing of Neil Peart. And I've
right.
got Willie Nelson. I bought the Willie Nelson one just recently because I'm like, yeah, I'm hedging my bets on that one.
Yeah. Oh, God, that's awful, but it's true.
That's an awful feeling. But he's 80. I want to say he's 80.
Yeah, dude, like the fact that he's still walking around is pretty nuts. Given
And
that guy's done some hard living. Let's just put it that way.
oh yeah, he was. Yeah, he was definitely the space cowboy. Um, let's see. What else has been going on? Oh, I got a couple of Axe Heaven reproductions of my Gibsons.
Right.
So I have an Axe Heaven reproduction of that one and the SG, but this one is still coming. The cherry thing. They just happened to be ones they did already. I didn't what do you call it? Consign
I'm just
them
rolling my eyes because I'm like, dude, do you even need that?
And then, well, yeah, and then I bought. So for the Funkos, I went crazy. I don't know what I was thinking. I bought all of the Valentine's Day Star Wars ones. Don't ask me why. They're little Valentines with like Darth Vader's holding a "Be My Valentine" thing, and then I bought. I ordered the Devo. They have Devo in. It's just one of the characters, but it's got Devo in the "I Can't Get No Satisfaction" video from Saturday Night Live when they wore the like.
Yeah.
COVID-19, yeah, the yellow hazmat suits, and then I got the Devo, the weird hat from Whip It.
Oh, that's the cereal bowl.
The cereal bowl, the upside down flower pot, and what else did I get? I ordered. Oh, geez. It's just great. Oh, I ordered 10-inch versions of they're going to come in here. I'm going to put them in here somewhere. I'm going to start getting shelving in here so I can put these things up. I ordered the 10-inch version of Godzilla and King Kong because of the new movie coming.
Yeah, now so that I can get a little bit excited about, but
yeah.
I don't know. I'm totally over collecting that stuff. I don't have a place for it, and I got, from when I was a kid, we used to collect stuff like that, and I just got like, I still got stuff of my parents that's like just boxes of that stuff that I need to go through, and I'm like, I am not creating this mess for myself any further.
Well, you can see these 4 albums, right? And these are albums I had when I was a kid, and the first person that would say, "Jim, you don't have a record player," and I don't. So why do I own these? Well, it's just kind of like
nostalgia. That's all it is.
Nostalgia. Yeah, it's literally nostalgia. So the one that's like you said, I got to take the so they're all in the shipping plastic.
Plastic will eventually, because it puts off a gas.
I think it does. Yeah, I think you're right. So I'm going to take the plastic off. As you can see, that's Dark Side of the Moon, Animals, Wish You Were Here, and the Wall. By the time the Wall came out, that was my last vinyl. Probably one of the last vinyls I bought, because I went in the Navy, so I was buying cassettes. So Final Cut I owned on cassette, and then by the time I did start to go back to a medium that was like that, it was CDs, because in the mid '80s I went CDs. CDs actually came out.
CDs were like becoming real popular.
Yeah,
79 was the first year for consumer CD players. 79, I think. We looked that up one time.
82. I think
82 was when the first popular ones for home came out, but the first release one was like 79. It was like $10,000 or something.
Yeah, it was super expensive. And by the time I got one in 86, I think 86 or 87, I bought one. Montgomery Ward's, if you remember them, was going out of business, and I bought one that was in there that was a Panasonic 6-disc changer that was regularly like $1,500 or some ridiculous number like that. I got it for $150. I got it for 90% off because it was sitting there. I think somebody tried to hide it And so it was sitting
No,
in a place where, yeah,
you were right. It is 1982 that the first digital audio compact discs
that's what
debuted.
I thought. Yeah.
I was talking. I don't know why I was thinking it was
79,
79.
79 was when they
Maybe
started
79 is VHS.
that. No, VHS was out in the earlier 70s. I think 79 was when they started when they came up with the idea. And it was actually 79. Isn't that when they came out with Laserdisc? Or was it earlier than that?
No,
I know Exit
Laserdisc.
Stage Left was the only
Laserdisc
Laserdisc
was
I ever
later,
watched.
considerably later.
Well, no, because
Uh,
I watched Exit Stage Left on Laserdisc. That would have been 80 or 81.
no, so it was. It originally showed up as Disco Vision
Yep.
in 1978, so it wasn't
Yeah.
technically Laserdisc until like 1989 or some shit. But its origins go back further than that as
Yeah.
Disco Vision.
Yeah, Disco Vision in '78. And my cousin had
That's what I'm thinking of.
the laser
It's
disc player, and he had Exit Stage Left, and I remember watching Exit Stage. And what killed me was so Exit Stage Left, the laser disc had the full drum solo that Pert did on YYZ. And so I
right.
rushed out to buy the CD when it came. I was like, "Oh yes, I'm going to get the CD."
It's not. Yeah, it wasn't on the
Exit Stage
CD.
Left, and it wasn't on the CD. I was like, "What are you kidding me? Really? They don't have room?" Because back then, I don't know if you remember, CDs, the codec for CDs wasn't very good, and so if you had a double
You had 80
album,
minutes.
you
You had
had
80 minutes.
80 minutes. They didn't put they had to, because what they did was they did that to Iron Maiden's Live After Death, and they did it to that where they took music out to fit it into that 80 minutes.
Yeah, because they didn't want to put it on a second disc or whatever, and that's probably what you're running up against. A lot of times, you'll find that they did that even though they didn't need to, though, and they did it
Yeah.
because the original vinyl copies of the music, they wanted it to match the vinyl record, and it was like, well, we're just going to cut off this section,
Yep.
and it'll only be available in the live film, you know?
Exactly.
And it's like,
And
what the hell?
it was crazy. I finally got the version that has that full long because that's a very musical, probably one of the most musical drum solos I've ever heard in my life. Anyway, then in what's funny is Pink Floyd's The Wall has a similar story. The Wall had a couple of songs. One was When the Tigers Broke Free,
Right.
and one was Is There Anybody Out There? No, before Is There Anybody Out There? It was called oh geez, I can't remember. Anyway, um, they had to remove When the Tigers Broke Free, which was in the movie and not on the album, and they
Right.
removed the long version of geez, I can't remember. Anyway, and I really loved. I read all the lyrics, because when you got the album, you got the lyrics on the album,
Right.
and the album lyrics they included When the Tigers Broke Free, and they included the long version of that one song, and I was like, my album's broken. I literally
Yeah.
thought, because I had received an album once, a record. Oh, it wasn't a record; it was a cassette that was missing. And it was you're gonna laugh, but it was Saturday Night Fever. I got Saturday Night Fever, and it was missing the whole second side. And when I brought it back, they go, "There's nothing missing. You're crazy. There's no way they could have missed it." They did. They missed the entire
Yeah.
second side. And so
Get over
I
it.
was, yeah, I was like, "What the hell's wrong with this album?" And it wasn't until years later, because you didn't have anything that told you anything about, like, you didn't have the internet
Yeah.
to tell you, "Oh, this is broken." It's
Yeah, that Tigers Broke Free is like not on the record, like, and I think they did some sort of reissue at some point that had it,
yes,
which because I know it's on Echoes, like that was a big deal when they put it on Echoes, but which is actually kind of funny because like that's supposed to be their retrospective, right? And then here's this song that wasn't actually on the record,
the,
the original
yeah.
release, and I sort of
Ah.
recall like when it came out on CD, they were able to put it on there. and so they
Yeah.
did, but
No, not on the first CDs, on the reissues. So Empty
yeah,
Spaces was the
the
call of it.
remaster. Because the first, so like if you didn't know this, Jim, you know this, but for our audience, like when CD first started happening, a lot of times they were just taking the record masters and literally pressing them to CD, like going straight to production to CDs without doing a master. And that happened later. So I have like the Doors catalog. I have all of that stuff prior to remasters, and then I have the remasters, and I have the Genesis catalog, which is like massive, like 18 records or something. I have all of them that way too, and you can hear the difference going from step to step to step, like the difference in quality and stuff. And it's actually kind of interesting if you put them in your iTunes library and then listen to them song by song. Like you listen to the same song 3 times, and you'll realize, oh, they really did make a difference there. But it led to a massive record collection. I had like 60 or 90 records at one point that were all like basically the same CD.
So this is how much of a nut I am about Pink Floyd. So I have this. It's the Immersion,
Right.
and this is the Wall. There's two others. There's Dark Side of the Moon, and there's Wish You Were Here. But in here, look at this. There is there were 7 discs in here, and this thing went for about $145. You can find them, but it's not. You won't find a first print unless you find one that you're lucky enough somebody left it in the thing. But so this had the first time I was able to hear all those songs the way they were meant to be recorded. And what's funny is that it also has a whole disc of all of Roger Waters' demos.
Yeah.
And they are awful. I mean,
yeah, they're usually not very good. Like I've heard the ones for Dark Side of the Moon, and I'm like, really? Like that's what they used to make that? So you can see how much impact he had producing it for his name offhand.
Alan Parsons, and of course
Parsons,
for the Wall it was Bob Ezrin. But yeah, the funny part is, so when they did, and I know what you're talking about. There's this famous one. You guys can find it online. American Eagle did a great series on classic albums.
Yeah,
they did.
And they threw
Asia.
the money one in there.
The money one.
It's awful.
It is terrible, and it shows you just how much Roger Waters cannot sing in tune. He is a mile off.
I mean, yeah, and then he had to, like, as time went on, he wanted to become more of the focus, and it was like, dude, sometimes being a great like musician is knowing when to step back.
Yeah, and knowing
nobody
when
was complaining about your bass playing. You know,
right?
Like, let's be real here. Like,
well, actually, it's funny because when you mention his bass playing, that's actually David Gilmour playing the bass on one of the most famous Pink Floyd bass lines, which is Welcome to the Machine, where he goes,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, no, sure, and like I guarantee you, there's stuff on those albums where Waters played an acoustic guitar, or you know.
Oh yeah. There are, like on Mother. Yeah,
that's not surprising. But you actually. So we're talking about it. Actually, I think the most interesting thing about that record, "Dark Side of the Moon," since we're talking about that specifically, was that like so much of that was made in the studio, and it was really the band's input as to the music side of it, and less Waters, like because the Wall's a whole other animal, right? So it's like Waters wrote this big magnum opus of lyrical content to go with basically these like bare bone chord changes that they went in and they of course made a record out of by jamming this stuff out, and basically Waters being a dictator the entire time it was going on, and which is funny because he in the movie the character that like I most associated with Waters' voice is the dictator.
Yeah, he becomes the dictator. He becomes a Hitler-esque character. Like,
he saw himself as being that, but he didn't realize he'd actually become that person. Like he thought he had stopped himself, and like this record was like him admitting that this could have happened. No, dude, it did happen. You are still that person today. You just don't realize it.
Yeah, you did it, and you're still doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. As much as you like to think you're not, you went down that path and you cannot turn back now.
And he had no real family feelings for his band because if
Definitely not.
anybody remembers, Rick Wright was going through a divorce at the time, and it was very painful for him. And instead of standing by him, which Gilmour did, and unfortunately, Mason always just sat on the drums and did his thing. He didn't get into anybody's business. So Waters and Gilmour went head to head on that, and Waters kicked Wright out of the band. He was the only person who made money on the tour. It's a known fact that, as far as the four original members, he was no longer a member of Pink Floyd. And if you look at the album and if you read the album, it goes Pink Floyd. It goes David Gilmour, Roger Waters, David Gilmour, Nick Mason. Rick Wright is not on there. Later, they added him because he did play keyboards, but he played as a studio musician.
Yeah,
and he played as
It hurts to see that kind of stuff, especially from a band that's so beloved. That like those dudes, freaking like 3 of the members loved each other, and well, maybe not even so much that. I think they had their falling outs too, but like Roger Waters basically divorced himself from everybody else and crowned himself king. Yeah. Like that's really jacked up. Yeah. And that is definitely, like you said, did not see the rest of his family and kind of just took control of the outfit.
It was it was really a bad move because he destroyed his relationship with the rest of the band, and no matter what he did, oh yeah, no matter what he did on what was it, his leftover songs from The Wall and the Final Cut became what is it, something about hitchhiking.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And Clapton even played on that album, and nothing could save it. It was a hot mess.
Yeah, and it was like it didn't chart very well either. It was
and yet Gilmour sat. He decided to take a break.
He phoned some records in pretty much, and was
like About Face. Yep.
Yeah, and then of course he did. What's the one with the blue cover? The one that's really really good. Recent, not recently, probably 15 years ago.
Well, geez, it's been a while. Yeah. They did Momentary Lapse of Reason and
not as a Pink Floyd though, but like as his album.
About what is it, about an island or on an
island? Yeah.
That was quite a while ago. It's
an unofficial Pink Floyd record.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like that's I kind of look at that and I go, Waters, you missed the boat. Like you didn't realize what people were interested in that band. Nobody cared about the lyrics, and I mean they did, but it was like it was the whole experience. And he threw it all away, thinking, "Oh well, my words are what's selling this." Like, no, your words have nothing to do with why this is selling. Yeah, like you're on crack out in the field somewhere.
Yeah, and the only reason I think On an Island was a David Gilmour album was because if I can remember correctly. Wright played on it. I know that for a fact. Wright played on it, but I think Mason didn't. And,
no, I don't think Mason did. I think it was a health issue, believe it or not.
Yeah, and Pratt, who was playing bass for Pink Floyd, he was the Roger Waters replacement. He did everything. He did the vocals for Roger Waters when they were live.
Right.
Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt.
No, I don't think so. Try again.
And now I can't remember his name because I just said Chris Pratt, but his name is Pratt. Anyway, he played, he did the Roger Waters stuff. So he was on everything that Gilmour did until relatively recently. Gilmour's just a statesman. You see him and he's too level-headed for that shit.
He's a jolly, nice old man now.
He is.
I mean, basically, that's kind of where he's at. Like, I'm sure he had piss and vinegar when he was younger, but now he just seems like, you know what, I've made a lot of money and I'm okay.
I think he was probably the most level-headed of the whole team.
Well, dude, like look at his. I mean, he just sold. I thought he was going to announce he was terminally ill or something, but he just sold like all of the guitars that were responsible for his legacy. And his attitude about it was like, well, I can get new guitars.
Yeah, what? And it's and he said it's time for them to create music for other people, which I thought was fantastic. But,
no, you mean it's time to create investment opportunities for hedge funds?
Well, you know what? Yeah, I hate to. Yeah, so with Gilmore, he gave all that money. No offense to, I mean, the guy can give it to anybody he wants. He can give it to a bum on the street, but to put it where he did, to have a philosophical, and educated discussion about what he did with that money, um, you're not going to save the planet with a few $1,000,000, and it's not going to bring anything to what he was doing. And I think,
we know enough about it. I mean, like, I think it's more about awareness at that point than the financial contribution.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I think a lot of it though went to feed people, which is where it should have gone.
Yeah.
But I think a good portion of it also went to when I was like, what is that, Greta Thunberg or whatever, her whole thing, and I was like, oh God. But not to I don't want to politicize this thing or anything. It's just that it's a drop in the bucket to what really needed to be done. To
the name of the charity is Client Earth, by the way. I went and looked.
Client Earth, that's it. It was Client Earth, yeah. But again, he can do what he wants. It's just that it's going to take billions and it's going to take the changing of minds in places that we have no control over. None of the Western world has control over. So I don't want to
switching gears, family and music and all that. Did you sent me the video that was the NAMM coverage from Gibson about the Mesa Boogie transition?
Yep.
All right. I watched this video.
Yep.
Let me give you my impression of it. So it was like basically Randall Smith introducing the fact that like he's not getting any younger and that he needs somebody to steward his 40 plus family members that are working for him into a new era posthumously. So the way that he positioned this conversation in this interview is like nothing's changing. I'm still running the company, which is very much what we've already heard, right? I'm still running the company, and I will be running the company until I'm dead. Now,
right.
I actually watched this before you sent it to me. I'd seen it.
Oh, you did? Okay.
A few days before, but it was interesting because I've seen some people suggesting they may be in the know, and I don't know if it's true or not in various places, forums like the Gear Page and places like that, where people have said like, well, allegedly what really happened was Randall Smith had already entered into an agreement with Gibson to start designing amplifiers for them, and that they didn't feel comfortable having them produced elsewhere because it was like, where else are we going to go? There's not many places in the United States. We'd have to start our own shop. Like, we don't know the first thing about doing this. And that was when the conversation shifted. So if you don't know anything about Mesa Boogie's product development cycle is years. When they start developing an amp, like I think you talked about the dual rec, when they first did the dual rec line of amps, like they did like 4 or 5 years of R&D before they actually put out a product. And it was like we knew what we were going to do, and we had iterations that were functional, a year or two, and we just kept massaging it until it was ready for production. And if you've ever seen, there's a video where he shows like his workshop, and they pull out all these chassis that are just like, this is prototype 1, and this is prototype, revision 2, and he's got 15 chassis for the dual rec, and it's like, it kind of puts things into perspective where Gibson could have approached him 2 years ago and been like, we gotta get something going in the amp market. Like, we know that you obviously design amps and you love doing it, and like, we're willing to pay you a buttload of money to design us an amplifier. And I'm wondering, because there's been some other restructuring going on over at Mesa Boogie. Like, they changed their transformer supplier, and I think their existing transformer supplier actually went out of business. But they flipped the script fast. It wasn't like they struggled to find somebody that could produce the transformers in the quantity and quality that they needed. It was almost like they had somebody lined up, and they just switched production. And that's what I'm kind of wondering is like, maybe some of these things were falling into place as a result of some of these other things that were already going on. And there's like a lot of there's a lot of speculation, at least in my mind right now, that what this deal really is like, okay, we needed a custom shop. We already had this relationship with Randall Smith. We seemed to get along really well. Randall liked us, and it was a mutual thing at that time. But it also seems like the way he framed it was like, the deal is structured so that until my death, I still own like 51% of the company. And then maybe posthumously, the other 51% gets divvied out to the employees. And then Gibson owns 49%. So the company is still the tiebreaker, but you would have to have complete consensus amongst the employees to go against the parent. You know what I mean? Like that kind of situation where it's going to be a little bit of a tug of war, and not so much a Gibson plowing through the organization and being like, no, this is the way we're doing things now. That they would have to get the employees' consensus to agree to go on with those things. That sounds like the Randall Smith that I, have spoken with and stuff. Or at least been in the room where, he's spoken and talked to him briefly. That sounds like Randall Smith. Like, okay, we're going to do this, but we're going to do it on my terms and protecting his employees. Because that's always been a big thing for him. So I honestly, I took away from this, it was a positive thing. Now, here's actually what I want to talk about, though. So after that video ended, I was doing something else. The next video started. And it was Gibson doing their 2021 NAMM rollout. We've done this and we've done that. And, everybody is now talking about how good quality Gibson is and whatever. And I'm like, dude, what are you on? Like, all right, first off, it's been 2 years. Okay, I know you want to pretend like you've made this big splash and everybody's in your court, which probably most people are, right? Like everybody went wild for the Epiphone stuff. The new Gibsons I've seen they've been okay. I don't think they're perfect. I mean, I still struggle with the couple of Les Pauls I played in the 2019 or 2020 range that were like they had like a binding issue, or they had like something wrong with like a high fret in the around where the hump sits, 21, 22, 20, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. But I thought they were better than what I was seeing before. The nuts seemed to be cut better. Like I don't think I've seen any with like huge nut issues. I'm trying to think. But I've only played a couple, and honestly, like in order to win people over, I think they have to do this consistently for quite some time to break the stigma. Now, here's the evidence I want to provide for this before I get your thoughts, Jim. The Mesa Boogie thing, or actually no, I want to go back. I want to go back to I already had in my mind the guy that does the social media for them. I forget what his name is. Their head of marketing or whatever.
Agnesi.
So Agnesi came out and he did the Play Authentic video, right? The hostage video. And everybody was like, oh my God, this is going to make them look so bad. And then they started suing everybody. And everyone's like, oh my God, Gibson's falling apart. And Gibson's. So that stuff already at this point has largely faded. Okay. Like people are not really actively thinking about the Gibson lawsuits and the Gibson Agnesi hostage crisis video. So I think the lifespan of things coming out of Gibson, maybe like the mindset, those people that are against Gibson have already had like that thing come and go, right? You know what I mean? Like it was there and then it's not there anymore. But it was interesting because like all those feelings were brought back up when they bought Mesa, by a lot of those people. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot I hate Gibson. But it's like things around that company don't seem to linger. And so I was wondering, like, if they have this whole new big splash product, I would think that the same like kind of thought process would drive that. It's like somebody would look at the situation and they would go, okay, they have switched gears, great, and then slowly that memory fades and it comes down to proof in the pudding, right? So I just wonder like how long that time period is going to take before everyone accepts that their quality standards have increased and that they're putting out the right line of products. And I will be critical in a moment, but I'll let Jim talk for a minute.
That so here's the way I saw it because I'm looking at it from a different perspective, obviously, and I'm looking at a perspective of a Gibson player. I mean, I love my Gibsons, right? Love you love your Strats. I love my Gibsons. Um, and I'm not saying you love Fender. That's not that's
No,
not what I
that's
said.
the
That's not what I
opposite.
said. And I know
I
that's
don't
not
have
what
love
you
for
said.
either of those companies.
Okay, so let me say this. So I have three Gibsons, all three of them. No, four. But it doesn't matter. The acoustic is a different thing. It's almost like the acoustics have kept going the way they kept going. It comes out of I think it's somewhere in Montana or Washington.
Montana. It's
Is
Bozeman,
it
Montana.
okay? Washington. Yeah, I was right, Montana. But I didn't want to. I've been wrong before.
I only know that because they mentioned it in the video. So
Yeah. So Montana's been doing what Montana does, and people. I can tell you this, and there's a lot of people that agree with me. But Gibson acoustics are awesome. They're expensive. They're awesome. Period. But um, uh, this is where I was going with it. When it comes to, so they didn't mess with that. They were like, okay, that's working. Don't touch it. Don't break it. It's fixed. It's already fixed. Don't break it. And so now you have to take a company that's got, I don't know how many people work at the plants, but when all this started, when all this initiated, right? We're talking almost 3 years ago now. It's been over 2 years when the whole thing went over. Okay, 2018, and so we're going into that because I think it was some summer of 2018 when it actually changed over. Because 2018 NAMM didn't really see any changes. It was after NAMM, it was into the summer. So anyway, here's what I've seen because I have a SG that's a standard from that. I have the Les Paul that's a standard from that. I have the ES335 that's from that. Of the and I unboxed a buttload of them. Okay, at Guitar Center, a buttload. Um, and I didn't do the old ones. Okay, I wasn't there for the old ones. I worked at Guitar Center, 2019, 2020, and then I just left. So I unboxed a lot of the ones that are new. What I saw was very consistently people loved them. Okay, now these are the ones I've seen. They're not all of them. I know that there are ones that are out there that Jim never touched, so it's okay. But I'm just saying that there's a lot out there that didn't get done. There minor things. Yeah, I told you that there's a little bit in the finish on my 335 where the neck, right about here where my finger ends, where the top of the pick guard and over the neck. There's a little bit of finish right there that it's white. How is it white? I don't know. Did somebody just I don't know.
Can I ask you a question though? How
But
much did that guitar cost?
the guitar cost $3,000. Now it's a yeah, but
That's
it's
where
a
I'm like, that's not acceptable on a $3,000 guitar.
well, and that's uh, this is where where we're sitting right now is that these things that we're talking about they get through. I could have as a person that works at Guitar Center said, "Hey, Gibson rep, this needs to go back for fix." I instead bought it. I accepted it. So was it worth it to me? Yep, it was because I didn't want to take a chance that oh yeah,
Sure.
we're going to take that one back to the shop. They pulled the Grinch before Christmas or the Grinch is still Christmas. We'll take this tree back to and then we're going to give you nothing. So and then I'll have to wait 6 months to get one. And I wasn't going to keep working at Guitar Center for 6 more months, but also because I liked that one, and that's the one I wanted. And the fact that there's a little bit of white in there, it's so small. I mean, I literally have to go. Okay, there it is, there it is. Um, but that said, um, somebody should have caught it. I don't question that. Hey, this one's missing the entire cherry of the Heritage Cherry. That
I think it's worth saying this though, Jim. I'm nitpicking, like
yep.
obviously nitpicking, like oh minor finish issue, right? And in my opinion, on a $3,000 guitar, I'm not paying. I would have turned it back. But that said, I know that before when you had $3,200 and $3,400 Les Paul standards were coming out with nuts that were improperly cut and binding issues and finish issues all in the same guitar, you gotta go, who do they think is going to pay $3,400 for a guitar that's basically a mess?
Well, that and let's be honest. Gibson's had problems with freaking quality and build since the '70s. Not just Jaskowitz.
Yeah, well, I mean, Jaskowitz, obviously there was like a renaissance in the early '90s.
Yeah,
but
so there was this. There was the '50s. That's okay. That's the golden age, right? Or platinum age, whatever we want to call it. That's the age of, those are the best Gibsons ever made. Although we probably only know of
a lot of dog shit Gibsons from that period too. I was just watching a video on 59s and they were talking about the regular flaws that you will find that can help you identify a 59.
I watched that
really
too.
Hilarious.
Yep, I watched it too.
It's really hilarious because when you watch that stuff and it's like, here, this is how you can tell it's a real 59 because they never finished this part and this part is always messed up. Like, and what the hell?
And the headstock wasn't even. I watched that same video.
Flip the pick guard, it's got lines on it, because it was on a conveyor belt.
Tooling. Yep. Yeah. And they didn't polish those off, and it's all kinds of things. And who's going to flip their pick guard off over and look at it? Who cares?
Right.
But I'm just saying that these were little flaws that actually that's how you identify that the thing is real.
Yeah.
Is because nobody, even the custom shop, misses most of those flaws, if not all of them.
Well, that's what they were saying. Actually, in the video, we may not watch the exact same video because I think in the video they were saying like the VOS gets most of the stuff right. In fact, he said the only thing that I can tell apart from the VOS and the real deal is he's like when you look at the ABR bridge, he's like the part where the pin goes in for the saddle. He said that's slightly thinner on the real deal.
Yep. The back of the ABR one bridge, he took out a pair of calipers. He's like,
that's the only way you can tell. And he said it's really a range. He's like there could be thicker 59 versions. So
right. He goes, but 59s were between 1.1 and 1 point this millimeters, and these were between this and this. And he's like, wow, that is really nitpicking. But that's what you got to do when you're telling somebody, yes, if you're putting your reputation on the line and you're saying, yeah, you could pay $200,000 for this guitar, I'm pretty sure that you want to be right.
Yeah, because I sent Jim a 59 before. It was a 59 or a 60 before this show, and it was like $270,000 or something.
Yeah. And it was on sale though. It's $175,000.
Yeah, and they still want to charge shipping too. Did you see that?
Yeah, I was like,
for real?
No, I will fly there and get it for $175,000. You just hang on to it. I'll be right there.
I will show up at the place and I will take a boat back.
Yeah, I will drive there. I'm getting there, and it is going to get its own seat on a flight, and we're going to make sure we're not on the lost thing. So anyway, what I'm getting at is that's exactly what I was getting at. With the exception of the entire finish missing from this guitar, which is still what makes it special and what makes it awesome. You don't have the big flaws and issues that we had. Are they working through issues? Yes, they are. Were there obviously employees that were letting shit get through that never should have got through? For fuck's sake, yes. That never should have happened. The employees, I don't care if it was the Jaskowitz era, there never should have been employees that were allowing fret ends that cut your fingers, or finish issues, or where the binding wasn't right. Come on.
I think the managers over there were during that time period. All right, so let me set it up. I'm gonna do it the right way. So they have their renaissance, right? They're selling really well in the early 90s. Up through really the early 2000s, they're doing excellent. Around 2002, 2003, the market starts to drop off in the new sales for them, and that's when they start squeezing. And just like whenever, and they've been squeezed before. That's what happened in the 70s.
Yeah.
Anytime a company's investors or the management changes and they come in and they've got a good thing, like the first thing they do is like, how can we make more money off of it? And they start squeezing. And that's what happened to Fender and CBS. CBS rode that wave for a little bit, and then they were like, all right, now we can make shit cheaper, and they just squeezed, right?
That's right.
And so we saw that squeeze coming out of Gibson. The quality control was one of the parts of that squeeze. The switch to using shitty wood was another part of that squeeze, and they would say, "Oh well, weight relieved." That was because it was waterlogged, and they were literally routing that stuff out so they could bake the bodies so they would actually be decent. They were doing whatever they could to get by with crap wood in order to make the guitars they were making, instead of just saying, you know what, we got to do a price increase, or accepting that a 30% margin was fine. Gibsons aren't a 30% margin, Jim. You know that. You've worked at a retailer. Like, they make good money off those guitars, which is what's just nuts to me. Is like when the Les Paul Standard was pushing $3,400, and I'm going, guys, your tops don't even look good. Like, what the hell are you doing that you're charging $3,400 for this guitar? That was around 2014, 2015. And then was it 2016, I think, is when they had the bad year where they did all the robot tuners and all that crap. That's like when they went full crazy.
2015.
And, yeah, the 2015s. And the 2015s is when they finally admitted that we really don't even care about cutting the nuts. And we've gotten beat up so bad for it that we came up with this like brass nut thing. Adjustable brass nut. Nobody wanted that. Just cut the fucking nuts right. Like, what is the goddamn problem?
So
and so now we're back to an era where we're coming in, right? I think we're going to see a renaissance. I think we've already started to see the renaissance happen. I just don't know what that renaissance means. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to slowly like get to a point where maybe JC Curley leaves, and then somebody comes in and squeezes again. And that's what I'm concerned about.
Okay, so yeah, I got you there. Let me come back with it. So and say where of course neither one of us was working for Gibson, so we're kind of
no, sure. And actually on that note, since we're talking about working for Gibson, Glassdoor has gotten better, but it's still not great. We talked about Glassdoor Gibson, on the Glassdoor review site, employees reviewing their employer. It's gotten better, but it's still not good. There's a lot of people bitching about their management. Like, are you serious? These people are still here? Because a lot of the middle management's still there. So
yeah, and it's a tough thing for people to do, for companies to do, is to get rid of management. But let's not that they shouldn't.
It's a long time,
but it does take a while. Let's back up. And let's talk a little bit about just that. So I got to agree with you on a lot of points, almost every single one of them. So in the 70s, they said, how are we going to get away with the woods? We can't get the woods. We're fighting with other manufacturers. We're fighting with at that time, I don't know if you remember, people when you were younger, a lot of really fancy desks were coming out for
plus you had the oil prices and all that stuff at that time. You couldn't import.
Right.
Mahogany, we don't get Honduran mahogany here in the States.
Not every day, yeah. That's right. And so what was happening was not only was the sources drying up, but it was like, okay, how do we do this? They started making the pancake bodies. They started making the using garbage wood. Again, like you said, in the 2000s, they were using wood that, hey, you know what? We can't make this. It's waterlogged. It's shitty wood. Let's face it. It was fucking garbage. And okay, well, if we route it out,
yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. What did Billy Gibbons do? That's right. He shaved his down. He routed it out. Let's make it like it was a good thing, and let's route the shit out of it.
They did a like a I don't want to say flip the script, but they rebranded it, what is essentially like, here, this is how we can take wood that we shouldn't be using and make it wood we should use.
Right. And so we'll pull whole parts of it. Now it doesn't matter what the wood looked like, because you can veneer now the back, because literally the back was a glued on piece just like the top is glued
veneer
on.
The damn sides if you want to.
That's right. So they were able to veneer the guitar, make it look like one piece when it was actually a bunch of pieces. You had no idea how many pieces.
I'm sure some of those guitars
Swiss cheese.
I'm sure some of those guitars were great. Actually, the weight relief thing, I'm fine with that. Like, weight relief doesn't bother me in the least bit, but it was pretty well known. A lot of people were talking about the fact that Gibson was doing it to cut costs.
Right.
And
Reasoning.
that was really
that's what I'm saying. The reasoning is what's there. So when you take now here's the thing. So if you ever watched a Gibson, I've said this before. I watch those things where they show how they build a guitar. If you ever watched how the Gibson puts together a Les Paul, one of the most important things is the binding, right? And one of the complaints during that weight relief time and during all that time, what was it? The binding. The binding was pulling away. The binding wasn't holding on right. The binding was doing this. Well, Gibson does a very specific way of putting binding on. They've been doing it the same way for like 60, 70 years. And it requires taking rope, okay? You take the binding and there's glue and it's really sloppy. You just glue the shit on there.
Paste on there and then you scrape it off and sand it down.
Yeah, and then they wrap the binding when it's still gluing. They wrap it in a certain way. And the reason for that is so that it puts pressure points in certain places. Well, if you think about it for a minute, if you've got a piece of wood that's not the same as the piece of wood, the pieces of, I should say pieces of wood you had before, we had a top, you had a thing, you put them together, you glued them. That's not hide glue. Hasn't been since the 50s. Sorry to tell everybody. That was another thing we learned in that 50s video. The
tops were never hide glue.
Never hide glue. It would have never fit. It would have taken like 2 years to freaking dry. So I exaggerate. It's a little hyperbole, but it would have taken way too long, too long to dry. Yeah, nobody really knows because it was never done. They used like a Bakelite.
I'm willing to bet that people have done it now and can tell you how long that takes to dry. But back then, they were not willing to test that theory.
No. So anyway, they put the back and they put the glued top on, and then they just glue the crap of it. There's so much excess glue on purpose, by the way, which is
where all the cost is and all that extra glue.
And then they're just slopping glue all over the place, and then they're just wrapping the crap out of this thing, and then it hangs, and it hangs for days. Okay, and then by the time they get all the way done with all the guitars they got to do, the next one comes around. That's the dry one that the person's taking off, and then they can reuse the rope and they don't. They're slopping the glue all over the place. My point is, if you had that thing and it's a pressure point, and now you've had you take this thing and you've made it a saucer full of secrets, so to speak, to use a Pink Floyd term. You filled it up with air and stuff. The pressure is going to be different. I'm just guessing. So when I'm wrapping that thing up, is it really going to hold it the way it held it to two pieces of a solid piece of mahogany, a solid piece of maple together? I don't think so. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Moisture content in the wood would make an impact on whether that binding is going to hold.
Right. Whether it's going to, and it's going to change, because I just saw in a Gibson forum, I'll share this in a minute, but it's going to change the way that binding holds on. Now that binding is one piece on the top all the way around. And on the neck, that's amazing to me. And so if you take, it's two pieces on the neck, but I'm just saying that. So I saw in the old ones, in the ones when they weren't that good, I saw where the binding would split over time. It would just break. And you got to wonder, if you take a piece of wet wood, don't even worry about whether it's guitar or not. Take a piece of wet wood. Now, dry it, and then wet it, and then dry it. In other words, humidity and dry, and humidity and dry. What does that wet wood do? It expands and contracts every time. Expands and contracts. And so it's very important. That's why a lot of people wonder, well, how come the cheap wood and the cheap guitars and the wood doesn't matter and blah, 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 blah. It does when you don't want it to expand and contract. You want all that moisture out of it, so it's not doing all that. It's still going to do a little, but it's not going to do it to the point. I just got a friend of mine. He bought a Mustang. He bought a Fender Mustang bass, but it's a Squire. And he calls me up. He goes, Jim, I don't know why, but now the frets are cutting my finger. I go, dude, that's fret sprout. That happens. It's the wood in the fretboard has constricted. I said, have you got it in a dry room? He goes, yeah. And I said, take it in the shower or in the bathroom, run the shower and leave it in there. And when you're taking showers, just leave it in there, let it get wet. It'll come back out. That doesn't mean that it's going to stay like that. But
I don't know that I would recommend people do that. That's hard on your hardware. But if you just humidify.
That's what he said he's going to do. I said, just make sure you keep it in a humid room, and not over humid. 40 to 60%. 50% is your nominal, but anywhere in those categories. So anyway,
for my hygrometer.
Yeah. Mine is over here somewhere. But yeah, you want to keep it. And I've got, you can see it right there. There's a that little blue thing with the white cap. That runs 24/7 in here. The only time I turn it off, matter of fact, if I stop talking, you might be able to hear it hum. See how?
No, I can hear it. Yeah, I can hear it for sure. That's my dehumidifier because I live in a hobbit hole, so I actually have to run this in the winter.
Yep. Which is, yeah, if I lived in New York where I lived down below ground level, I actually had to run a dehumidifier, even in the winter. But anyway, so my point is, if you do that, those Gibsons would, the binding would split because now the wood you're glued to the maple and you're glued underneath to the mahogany. They're not going to move the same. The maple may not expand or contract the same as the mahogany does. So guess what that causes? That causes cracks. That causes problems. And I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. Now, so let's fast forward it now. So what I hope, and I don't know, because again, some of those things are,
None of us know what's going to happen for the future. If that's where you're going.
Right. So the nut cuts are better. Are they perfect? No, absolutely not. Better. But have I heard people doing this to their Sirs? Have I heard them doing it to Tommy Andersons? Yes, I've heard people going, "Oh yeah, I've got nut fucking problems. I've got nut problems with the Strat." So don't tell me it's just a G string on my.
Well, you know what, though? That's not what I was talking about in terms of nut being improperly cut. I'm talking about the height.
I'm getting to that. As a matter of fact, because I want to address because everybody goes to the tuning issue. I had to laugh because Tom Bukovec's latest video in homeschooling, he goes, you know what? He goes, if you cut the nut right, that guitar is going to stay in tune. You got to cut it goes, it's all about or not.
And everybody argues what the right way to cut it is, and it's like I think that's all kind of mythological. I think if you use nut lube, you'll be fine.
Yeah, that's what I use. I use nut lube. But anyway, so yeah, the nut heights weren't consistent, much less cut correctly. And worse yet, some of the nuts weren't in the slots properly. You'd see where the nut ended too soon, or the nut went over the wood. I mean, come on.
You had the guitar fretting out at the 22nd fret. Because the nut was like too far, like the string spacing wasn't right, basically.
Yeah,
it's like, what the hell are you doing? Were you drunk when you cut
the E string was off the freaking guitar by the time it got to the 22nd fret. Exactly, I know what you're talking about. So we're talking about the same things, and hopefully, and I haven't seen those with these. Not to say that it doesn't exist, not to say that it hasn't happened, and not to say that people aren't human. Again, my guitar missed a whole, I keep pointing to that, but I want to stress that my guitar missed a whole process. The whole thing. It didn't get, and here's what the logic of the manager, if I'm a manager on that line, I've got QA and QC, right? And I've also got what they call it slippage or whatever. It's loss due to the fact that you made a mistake somewhere along the line. I don't know if you guys remember. So there was a thing in the 80s. There was a movie with Michael Keaton that kind of brought this to light, where Michael Keaton went to Japan to learn how to, what was it called?
Gung Ho.
Gung Ho. That's right. It was a great movie. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. And it's about the Japanese and the Americans and how we, as Americans overall, lost our way. Okay, it wasn't just that. Listen, this was automotive industry that they were talking about. We just didn't care. And if you've ever worked in a union shop, and I have, some of them still don't care. So let's look at this in a bigger, broader picture. If I'm a manager, and I've got stuff going through, and I've got my check sheet, right? And manager A sees the QA person in it, and this guitar didn't get. We'll use mine as an example. That's the biggest screw up. It's still yellow. Did somebody not notice that it's still yellow? And so this guy goes off and checks, or gal goes off, checks, and then it comes through, and they look at it and they go, huh, that's the wrong color. but it's already got a gloss on it. So what would we have to do? One of two things. You're going to take that body, you're going to throw it in the garbage.
Right. Bandsaw it.
Put it in a bandsaw or push it through. Now, this is on the edge of that transition. I come right back to what you were talking about with those managers.
Yeah, I'm not really sure they wanted to let that one through. It somehow got out the door. It's like the one anomaly. There might be 2 guitars a year that end up like that.
Yeah.
Where it's like that should not have been in the wild, but it got there somehow.
Yeah, he said it was in the hundreds of thousands of the guitars that would miss that, and not that it's never missed it. So did somebody do it on purpose? They meant to put it aside for themselves. Who knows? Who cares? The point is, it never should have got through, and it really never should have gotten wild. So it gets by that manager. Now the next manager sees it. Okay, the person that puts a neck on it, right? I think. I don't know if I think it's finished before. Yeah, it's finished before the neck.
I don't think they do any quality control until the end of this whole thing. I don't think they're actually doing checks along the way. Not like Corey Smith does, but like if there's a neck and a body that have a problem, they just bandsaw them right in the middle.
Yeah. See, and now, so you get it to the last part. You look on the inside of my cavity. It happened before it got to the final. So there's a final group of people. Now it's a fit and finished guitar. Right. It's got frets. It's got stuff. It doesn't have machine heads. It doesn't have pickups. It doesn't have a the switch. Doesn't have all that stuff. There's a person that's got to throw the electronics in it and throw all the hardware on it. So that's a line. If you look at Gibson's thing, that's a whole line of people. Goes from the people that do the one end of it. I can't remember which one happens first, which chicken or egg happens first, to the end person. Somebody along the way did notice when they put the pickup in, because I've shown this did I show this in the group? There's a big scratch out. Literally, they scratched out where it says HSC for Heritage or HCS, Heritage Cherry Sunburst. They scratched that out. It's just sun. It isn't even burst. So somebody noticed and said, oh shit, that's not an HSC. And they just took a red Sharpie. It's literally somebody just went like this.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was probably supposed to go on the defective rack, and they probably just forgot to put it over there, and there it goes.
Well, I'm not sure. Now, see, this is where maybe they took that power away, because there's one person, there's a woman, at least that when I watched the video, and that's when mine went through. There's a woman in charge of that whole line, and until the very last person. Now here's somebody that allowed it to go through. Maybe that person didn't have. Now this is what happened in the 80s. This is where I got to that gung ho thing. In the 80s, they came up with this idea that anyone along the way would have a stop button. They could stop it. Say, all right, hold on. Something has to be fixed here. Something went wrong.
They definitely have put more quality checks in place over there. And, your guitar may have been assembled right before all that stuff was starting to.
That's possible.
And or it could be part of the upheaval. Like that was getting implemented and people were still asking questions and things weren't flowing right.
And maybe, now see, remember when people go through change at work, it's hard to adapt to change, right? I mean, that's one of the hardest things you can do. Sure. Especially when your job is rote. What I do is I put in pickups. What I do is I wire stuff. What I do is I put the Tone Pro bridge on. I don't care about pickups. That's not my job. I don't put finish on a guitar. I don't care. Let somebody else at the end decide. So when it got all the way through, the end checker should have said, that's not Harris Cherry. Well, they took a picture of it. It's on a desk just like this one. With an overhead camera, and the picture got shot. It's definitely not Harris Cherry. It's yellow. And so it's the sun part of the sunburst. So not to belabor it, but at some point, no one said, even the one that's standing behind, to say, check, check, check. So as you said, it might have been before people went, you know what? We were told by prior upper management, we can't throw these bodies out. We just got to let them go through, and we'll let the We'll let the Guitar Center
Yeah.
or Sweetwater or whoever ship them back to us. And if it gets through and nobody says anything, we eked it out.
Whatever. We didn't know about it.
Yep. Whoops. And that was probably the case before, was whoops. So now I think they're taking a harder look at those things.
So
go ahead.
all the quality control aside, like, I don't think my biggest gripe with Gibson now is not the quality control issues, right? Like, that was my gripe with Gibson before. Now it's lack of choice, which is weird. And then also, so when you buy a $2,400 guitar, Les Paul standard thing is $2,499 right now.
Yep.
I expect the top to at least be figured. And, like, I've seen some shit tops. Like, and I'm just sitting there going, how do they think that's appropriate? It's like, this is throwback reject wood. Use this on the cheapy guitars. Like, don't use this. Use this on the studios and paint it a flat color. Like, I don't understand. And people are like, well, you know, they make a lot of guitars and it's hard for them to get quality wood. I'm like, but then don't make as many. Like, what is the problem? I don't understand why you would want to mar your reputation like that. Because and believe me, Gibson ain't the only one guilty of this. Go look at some PRSs, some cores. I have seen some ugly freaking cores, and that's a $3,500 guitar. So it goes both ways. But then you've got companies like Heritage and I'm trying to think of some other, because I know there's some other small builders I've looked at that, like, a Heritage is basically same price as a Les Paul. I think it's like $100 difference one way or the other.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a bad top on a Heritage.
But and you could also, just like the people say, you could argue, well, they're only making,
right,
say 500 guitars,
500 or 1,000 guitars a year.
Yeah.
In their Les Paul.
And so it's easier for them to source that much chopped quality wood.
Right.
So
Yep. It just leads me down this circular path of, like, okay, so if you can't get good wood for bursts, then offer some other colors. Yep. Like, make some gold tops or something else is desirable. And they do the gold top, or P90s only.
No, there's both. There's a gold top,
they have a
gold top 50s and gold top P90s. And matter of fact, the P90 one, that's the only top you can get. If you want to talk about lack of
right. And I'm not asking them to make, like, because they used to make, like, every color under the rainbow. God. But, like, do something other than yellow and red.
Yeah,
like, seriously.
I know I gave PRS. I threw shade at PRS last week because, honestly, oh, look, there's a Lunar Cry or whatever frickin' version of the.
That was only done because the last one they did that was like that just, like, exploded. And
so did this one.
They're trying to prop up the sales of the Silver Sky, basically.
It sold all 1,000 of them in 15 minutes. And, of course, guess who's got both of them is frickin' Trogley. Look at me. I've got both of them. I'm sorry. I'm sure Trogley's the nicest guy in the world, but god dang it, his voice is so annoying. He pronounces everything so perfectly that it just pisses me off. I just want to go, Trogley. No, it's okay.
You do realize when he's doing this show, like, he's opening all the guitars and not saying a word. He doesn't actually start. He overdubs that later. He's not recording his voice when he's because it's too perfect.
Yeah,
like he's recording his voice after the fact.
Yeah,
so it's perfect.
Yeah, but the way he says things, and then he has such weird ways of. He's like a grandma. He's got to be in his 30s, maybe early 40s, and he's like a grandma.
Yeah, I think he's probably pushing 40s, but.
Yeah, but he's about your age, and yet he's sitting there going, like, oh, they've got this flighty thingy. I'm like, who says these kinds of things, Trogley? Come on, my mother doesn't even talk like that.
Well, I mean, like, I have nothing negative to say about the guy. As far as annoying voices go, I'm probably the most annoying person that anybody's ever listened to if they're listening to this show. But I don't have any negative things to say about the guy. Like, I totally understand he's a flipping dealership is basically what he is.
Oh yeah. He just buys
rare, weird stuff.
Yeah.
And then sends it out the door. And a lot of times he's buying things that he knows are going to sell, like, right off the bat. So
those
for him
will
to
sell.
Get the new that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
I just wish he was a better player, because when he
Perfect.
actually does demo something, I'm
God.
like, dude, God, no, hire somebody else to do it for you. Like,
He did the Chrissy Hind, and then he did the da 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 da, and I wanted to say, dude, listen, you're not listening back. You really need to.
he played
But
something the
I
other
get
day
it.
though that
I get it.
I was like really impressed. I was like, damn, I forgot
Yeah,
what it
he's
was,
getting
but I was like,
better.
listen, I was like, damn,
He's
like okay,
he's getting
but
better. You can tell he's working at it.
yeah, I just like I don't back to the original thing because we're talking about
But
Mesa Boogie and Gibson.
well,
I
wait,
don't.
yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me
You
finish
got a
the.
point.
Let me finish the point. So we as a there, I don't know if there would have been a good time for this announcement to happen. Okay, but
Hell no.
I know. Yeah, I know this. I know this. I was watching. I watch people. Okay, just like with Trogley, I listen to his voice and I'm trying to figure out what he's really saying. Um, and maybe I read too much into things. But as I was watching Randall Smith talk, and I was watching his face, his neck,
No,
and
he
his
seems genuine.
no, he's genuine. I think he's had a stroke. And if not, he's had close. Because if you watch closely, his facial, his he's not symmetrical in his movement or his.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't notice that at
I
all.
was watching very closely, and with that, I thought, I wonder if he's sick. Um, and
Could be.
there, yeah, and I'm not certainly not hoping that. I'm just there were some things that indicated to me that he might not be doing well. Um, I also noticed that Cesar from Gibson is a little less comfortable behind the camera than JC, and that's probably why they had JC do a lot of a lot of the talking because Cesar was a little
You
bit
know what?
less.
I honestly don't even care if we see Caesar's face in anything. Like, as far
Well,
as I'm concerned,
I think it was a
Anisi and JC should be the front.
I think it was important in this one because of what they were talking about. Cesar is
Sure, he had to develop the relationship between the two of them, and
right,
um,
and he was very. I could tell that both he and JC, of course, that's his job is to come off as being sincere, but he seemed sincere, and so did Cesar. The the thing that I see hope in, and I hope people see the same hope I do, is that Randall Smith was right there. Nobody had a gun to his head. He was sitting in his house,
yeah, and
and nobody.
he seems the same guy that you would like if you go to Gear Fest and you sit through one of the seminars. It seems like the same dude.
That's
He's
right.
not like reading off a script. It
Right.
was very conversational.
Yep.
And you could tell there was a little bit of humor there about the fact that like they knew that the world had reacted the way they did. It was kind of
Right.
like, what the
Yeah.
hell is you guys' problem?
Yeah. Just buck it up. And if he was reading a script, then when he said things aren't changing at Mesa, Boogie is not changing. We're just
At least as long
working,
as he's alive.
and which is could be true. I mean, he might have life lease, and then when he's gone, it might be a very Leo Fender-esque type
I
thing.
said I wouldn't be surprised if half the company goes back to the employees and the other half goes to Gibson, so that they have to have consensus.
Yeah,
But
but here's that way they only got to pay off one or two employees to keep them. But anyway,
yeah,
that's how it works.
Basically,
that's how it works, people.
yeah. Unfortunately,
So the what was I saying? Oh, but what they did say, because this was some of the stuff, and they hinted, was very hinting, was they'll be able to reach more places. In other words, they're going to be able to put Mesas back in other distributions.
I don't think that's as big an issue as you're making it out to be. I think that's a selling point for them to like encourage people. But I think the bigger issue there is we will have the capacity to serve bigger places and take those risks because right now they don't.
Right. And offline,
they are going to have an influx of cash. That's going to happen. Like that's a part of this.
Yeah.
Um,
So I can tell you because I'm no longer an employee. Some of the stuff I knew about Mesa that happened. And there's two sides to every story. But I heard this from more than one source. What happened with Guitar Center and Mesa was there was a big problem with customer service. That was one of them. But because Mesa did have problems keeping up. And I can understand when you've only got so many customer service people over there, you're only going to be able to serve so many customers, so to speak. That's what customer service is, right? And the other part of it was Mesa came out and said, we've got these pedals. We want you to carry X number of all of our pedals in every single one of your stores. And Guitar Center said, we want to test them in different markets. We want to do some test marketing because we want to. Oh no, we already know where they're going to sell. We already know they're going to sell. You're going to put them in every single store.
This is so hilarious because I've seen the letters. I've seen the letters that have circulated from basically Mesa Boogie and between Guitar Center where they were bitching because they were like, "What? You guys aren't paying us on time." So I highly doubt.
That's
what was driving this conversation.
Like I said, there's two sides of it. I know you're a Mesa Boogie guy, and I'm not going to change your mind on it. I'm just telling you.
No. This isn't about you changing my mind. This is about the proof that showed up and was handed to me versus a company telling you something and you buying into it.
This came from
that doesn't make sense.
A lot of sources.
How many of those people were there 10 years ago, 12 years ago when that happened?
All of them. Every one of the sources.
You're telling me every one of your Guitar Center employees that you work with was there 12 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah. Matter of fact, they were there for longer than that. They've been there since in the 90s.
Well, I mean, I know of at least one shill who would say something like that.
Yeah, but I didn't go. I don't know about any shills. But anyway, I don't know any shills.
You know at least one, and I'll tell you about it after the show. But
yeah, I don't know any shills, but I do know.
I'm not buying that at all. I'm not buying that at all.
And again, this came from several people. But the fact is, regardless, there was a lot of stuff that went on. But bigger than that, hopefully, and I think that they're looking more at their overseas markets when it comes to having the ability to get where Gibson, can bring them, because there are overseas markets that want to be able to bring in Mesa, and so that's a big one to show. So.
Interesting. So, worth noting, I don't know what the timeline there was, but those pedals didn't come out until 2013. So, and I'm pretty sure they lost that before 2013. I believe it was like 2010 or 2011. But anyway, nevertheless, I have a hard time with any company, and it doesn't matter whether it's Randall Smith or whoever the hell is at the front of it, Leo Fender, God willing, none of these people can say that they have had a situation on their record that's like not where we don't really want to tell people what's really going on here because it's an ugly situation. And that's where I'm worried in this kind of case, where it's like everything looks good on the surface, but 10 years down the road, it might be, in hindsight, might be a bad decision. You know what I mean? And that may be like maybe Mesa Boogie's looking back at what they did with Guitar Center and going, that's a bad decision. That's very possible. But it's funny because it's like, well, then we're going to go back by getting in bed with Gibson, and like 10 years from now, you might be looking at that as a bad decision. It's just one of those weird, like, seems strange to back off on that. Now we can speculate until we're blue in the face about what's going on the business side of all that stuff, but it is what it is, I guess.
Does Randall Smith have a family? Does he have a wife and children?
I believe he's married. I think he has kids. Okay. But like they portray him as very much like Mesa Boogie is his life. I don't know if that's necessarily accurate. I mean, he's a dude. Like, you meet him, he's a normal guy. People put him on this pedestal like he's some, like he's a Leo Fender type, and he's just a normal guy. And Leo Fender was a normal dude too. Like, when he was going around, he'd go to trade shows and he'd stand on guitar necks. I mean, there's pictures of him doing it.
Oh, yeah.
People put we've met enough. Or I don't. Well, actually, I mean, you've met some guys too. Now we've met enough of these guys to know that they're just normal people. I don't understand why people think they're like special or something. Now, I will say this: when you watch somebody like JC Curley, there's something else going on there with that guy, and it's just because he's a business oriented person, right? Like he doesn't come at it with the same panache that somebody that's like an engineer that happens to run a company comes out something like where they're very invested in the product. For me, like Curly is very invested in the marketing. I don't know that he's necessarily all that invested with the product. And actually, I kind of look at the way that he carries himself in this conversations. He looks great. He's slick. You know, he's a great orator and all this, and that makes me run. I'm like, what the hell? His guy does not belong in our business. Because I look at people like Josh Scott, who's in no way perfect, you know, at marketing, but his marketing is genuine. You know what I mean? Like you know when you see that room he's got over at JHS, like filled with every freaking pedal under the sun, like that's who that guy is. Because that's not you don't have your company do that when when you're a boutique pedal company. Now, granted, JHS is probably one of the largest boutique pedal companies in the world. But they are a boutique pedal company. I mean, everybody else that's in their same league is 10 years older than them.
Yeah, but Josh Scott isn't looking for investors. And Josh Scott isn't trying to maintain investors. And that's a big difference.
No, and that's what I'm pointing out, though, is that so JC Curley didn't come from the gear side of anything. He worked for freaking Levi's.
Yeah, I know.
Like, whether he plays guitar or not is irrelevant. My point is, I don't look at him with the same respect as I do somebody who, like, I know came from this side of the industry, because at least, like, and that's not always true either, because we're going to talk about UAD, but UAD, like, that's a company, like, there's another, holy shit, what kind of snake oil are they selling? And it's just because they come at it from a different place that I don't relate to. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that listen to our podcast that may not necessarily relate to.
Yeah, I wonder. We talked about this a few weeks ago when we first started talking about this. You got to wonder what's going to happen with JHS and Wampler and Keeley and
I mean,
geez, even Electro-Harmonics, because are they going to be sucked up by Boss? Are they going to get sucked up by somebody like that? I mean, at some point. Josh is going to want to go lay on the beach and enjoy himself, and he's not going to want to do that anymore. And is he going to leave the company?
Randall already said he's in a state of semi-retirement for Mesa. I mean, like that's a classic element there. But anyway,
and again, I'm not trying to say you're wrong or I'm right when it comes to any of this stuff. That's for sure. There's always the truth somewhere that doesn't.
We'll know in 20 years
exactly, or when
people have retired and they're willing to spill the beans what actually happened.
Yeah, or when Randall Smith is 87 and he's able to frickin' speak and he's able to go, oh, you know what? I'm on my deathbed. I don't care. Here's what happened. Or somebody does his biography, which would be an interesting story. I'd love to. Seriously, I'd love to start writing those books.
Can I add an anecdote?
Yeah.
So everybody thought they knew what happened when Ernie Ball and
Fender.
No, when Ernie Ball and not Leo Fender, but Eddie Van Halen parted ways.
Oh.
And like everybody was like, oh, well, it was just because they couldn't see eye to eye and they were wanting to change the guitar that EVH wanted. And it's like, well, that's part of the story. But apparently Eddie Van Halen and his wife had some thing going on. And like that was a big component of it that's been talked about behind the scenes for years. Who knows if it's true? It would certainly explain why he parted ways with a company like Music Man.
Wait a minute. Eddie Van Halen and his wife had something.
No. Eddie Van Halen and Sterling Ball's wife.
Oh, Sterling Ball's
situation
wife.
Going on,
Ooh.
Or she was like obsessed with him or something, and like they had a falling out, and it was really ugly, and it was behind the scenes, and I don't know that it has ever been made like blatantly public, but there's been people that have talked about it over the years that like there was something going on there.
It's rock and roll, man. That shit has happened. Think about Keith Moon, I got
to imagine he was already married to Valerie Bertinelli at that time.
Yeah, he was married to Valerie Bertin Ernie. But That's a South or not a South Park, but a Family Guy
But that's
reference.
my point. Is that's like we don't know. I mean, there
Yeah.
could be other things at play here that are just like completely out of left field.
Oh yeah, there's
They never get told to us because whatever.
it. Yeah, we might find out that poor Randall Smith bought a bunch of shorted some stock in Gibson, and now he's screwed.
Yeah.
Think about the current
Oh my
GameStop thing, right?
gosh. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I mean Robin Hood. So yeah, we just don't know. I would love to do interviews with some of these folks and write stories about them and what they do, because Josh Scott, his story has to be incredibly cool. But anyway, let's we don't know what's going on with Boogie. From
Can we
what
talk
we
about
can
UAD?
tell, yeah, because from what we can tell, it probably won't change, at least for a few years. And to be honest with you, if you don't have a Boogie, go get one if you really want one. If you don't worry about it. Just
It
let
doesn't matter.
things go as they go. There's
Yeah.
thousands of them out there. You'll
I'm
get
not
one.
I'm not running out to get
They're not
another one
rare.
right now. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
you are. You
freaked
already
out.
got one.
Well,
You
the
already
promo
got it
was
on order.
Yeah, I was on order before it happened.
Exactly.
I'm
You already
buying
got it.
Gibsons here currently.
That's right. You'll get your
Yeah.
Gibson as soon as it comes in.
Yeah.
But okay, let's talk about UAD, because that is an interesting one. A UAD.
All right.
So you want to introduce this one? You want to introduce this story?
Yeah, and I'll give my negative opinion to this, and then you can
Go for
take
it. And then I'll give my negative opinion. I
So-
don't think
so
I'll try to
UAD
I'll try to come up with a positive spin.
UAD is known for their walled garden appliances, and they have their audio interfaces that basically have a walled garden of plugins that can be very expensive. They can go anywhere from $50 on sale. Actually, I've seen below, I think $20 on Black Friday sales sometimes, to like $600 for a plug-in for their interface. Now, their interface has its own processor, which may or may not be patented. I'm not really sure on that. But the idea is that the processor takes the load off your PC. And the real reason that these are popular, and I've heard people say this to me before. I don't know if this is necessarily like the whole reason, but a lot of people buy UAD products because they can have a 5-year-old Mac that can't even run the current software and use the processor built into the UAD to do all of their plug-in work, right? And like that makes a lot of sense to me as a recording engineer type, but it's not the reason you should buy a product, right? You should buy it because it's good and not because it has something. Well, I mean, I guess that works out in this line of work. But anyway, gets into walled garden, right? And you know how I feel about walled gardens. I don't like them.
Nope.
But anyway, enter these pedals, right? So UAD has been historically like on that side of the business. Now they did come out with the Aux a couple years back, and the Aux box has been extremely popular with players. I am not a fan of the Aux box. I think the cab modeling in it is not great. It's okay. It's not great. It's like Helix quality, maybe a little bit better. I think that you can get better products from Torpedo for less money. And I'm not just talking about the Captor X. They've also done other products like the Studio Live, and then they have the big load box thing that they're doing for Studio Now. And they're all good products, right? And I think you can get by with the Aux. If you got one, don't feel bad. But I think the Aux is in a very limited market. The only other competing product that I know of that does everything that the Aux does is the Waza Tube Amp emulator from Boss, or the Tube Amp expander rather from Boss. It's a good product. Like
Yep.
A lot of people like it. There's some small limitations that some people have found with it. There have been some firmware updates and things like that. And I suspect when the TAE 2 shows up, it'll be really great. And when the same thing, when the Aux Box 2 shows up, they're probably going to iron out a lot of the kinks there. Now, here comes the bombshell, right? So as part of the NAMM Week stuff, UAD comes out with 3 stomp boxes. And they're calling them effects pedals, but they're not calling them guitar effects. And that's like the first thing you need to know, because they're like, well, these are so good that you could use them in a studio situation. These are studio pedals. That's kind of what they're thinking. They came out with a modulation pedal, a delay, and a reverb. And they did this big fancy live stream with Tor was on there, and James Santiago, who I love both of those guys. Actually, James Santiago is a great player and actually helped me unlock the secret of my fuzz face just recently. And I was interested. I was like, what's UAD going to do here? And I get about halfway through the video, and then they mentioned that they're $400. And I went, what? Are you guys nuts? And I stopped and I thought to myself, I'm like, wait a minute. They want to be Strymon. That's what this is. UAD seems to think that their product is so premium that they can enter a market space that is filled with competition. Very good competition, and in most cases cheaper than you by a lot, and suddenly be this big smash because they have the Ox. And I honestly think that their marketing department is a little crazy, because if they had done any looking at the market, they would have realized that there are like pedals that, so each of these is like a 3-function pedal, right? So like I looked at the delay real close because I'm looking at delays right now, and it has like a toggle switch for, deluxe memory man mode and Echoplex mode and something else. I mean, you can get that stuff now from other companies for way cheaper. I don't understand. I mean, I know that they're saying, well, the UAD proprietary algorithms match everything perfectly. And I'm like, well, if I really want a tube Echoplex sound, I'm going to go buy a Bell Epoch Deluxe. I mean, that's what Eric Johnson uses instead of his Echoplex now. So, it's damn good. I don't know that, UAD coming out and saying, well, we have modeled everything accurately is enough for me. Like, in all honesty, every company that models anything always says that. Always. And UAD doesn't have anything that's going to, like, suddenly make me believe it. It's like smoke and mirrors at this point. If you have the money to afford the analog gear, go buy the analog gear. If you want to have a UAD approximation, by all means, pony up, spend $400 of your money on something that doesn't have a proven track record, is coming into a crowded space with other products that I believe probably are already better than it is, for less money. I mean, I would put my Fathoms up against their reverb. I don't, and my Fathoms is like what, like $200? It's like, what are these people on? You can get a Source Audio Ventris that will just like puke all over most of the reverb computers in the market. You can get a Specular Tempest. I think that's the name of that pedal, right? And that's cheaper than the UAD. You can get a Strymon Big Sky for the price of their reverb. Yeah. Like, that's crazy.
Yep. So they have a mod, a reverb, and an echo. They're all $400 a piece. I'm sorry. Somebody is drinking Kool-Aid. I've got them up here on the screen right now. They're actually right here above our heads. Yeah. And yep. You actually just about touched the reverb. So it's funny because or echo pedal. It's just funny because I look at this and I go, "Are you serious? Are you actually going to expect me to pay that kind of money?" And so another I don't know if he does YouTube or not, but another guy that does the scene posted the modulator, and I went, I can't get, because we had talked about pedals I can't get excited about. All three of these pedals I can't get excited about them. None of them. Modulation.
Yeah.
They got the Astra modulator, the Golden Reverberator, and the Starlight Echo Station. And so if you look at these three, $400 a piece, and not a one of them does anything that Strymon already doesn't do. Right. And I can be honest with you, almost everything that their Echo does, my Bricket Carbon Copy Deluxe does, and it does it for $200.
Well, I don't think. I mean, it just depends on how specific you want to get. It'll be the Deluxe Memory Man setting on there. But it's not going to do the Echoplex.
I mean, I didn't say everything. I said almost. Yeah. But what I got into, what I said, I didn't, believe me, he and I didn't get into it. That's not the relationship we have. I said, and he agreed. I said, I don't see this as a pedal. I don't see the use of it at all. It's nothing that a plug-in can't do. Not a one of these is anything that they can't throw onto. If you spent the money on this, $1,200, you could take that $1,200, put it into a universal audio interface, and load their plugins onto it. And you're done. So what is this doing for you? Are you taking this on the road? Are you taking a $400 pedal on the road that if you really want to get into the micro cosmic parts of it and make changes, you still need a MIDI controller, which probably if you're spending this much money, you have, right? And and I did the math because we've talked about my pedal board. My pedal board is already $2,700. You think I want to add $1,200 more to it, or take a piece off of it and make it probably $800 more money because I took my my Univibe and chorus off and took my reverb off, which is my caverns, and took my delay, and then I replaced three $200 pedals. Let's pay. I took $600 and I put $1,200 on. So I just added. So I made my $2,700 board $3,300.
Dude, like what? I just $1,800 for, or not $1,800. It's $1,200 for for pedals that have less functionality than the Strymon mothership.
Yeah.
Then it's not that they do the same things; they have less functionality.
Yeah.
And the Strymon mothership is still popular with a lot of people. So this doesn't make sense to me. This is UAD saying we're the industry leader in recording, and so we're going to bring out these pedals, and you should buy them because we're great at recording. Now, here's the funny part, right? So in the course of their live stream, they said, and this just got me so bad. So James Santiago used to be real big on Huge Racks Inc. years and years ago. And I don't know whether he participated in that forum or whether he was like involved in that era of things, but he always had like racks and stuff in his videos when he was doing videos for Voodoo Lab and all that. And it was really funny because he said like these pedals are so good, they could just well be in a rack unit. And I thought to myself, like, why didn't you put them in a rack? Because I'm sitting there scratching my head and I'm like, if these are recording effects, why are they on the floor?
That's what I said. I said, no recording engineer is going to sit there and use his feet. That's not what they're going to do. So they're going to want them in a rack, and they're going to want them controlled by MIDI on their board.
That's what I said. I'm like, fine, do a pedal version of it, and then just skip all the MIDI functionality, charge a little bit less, and then put the rack version. So I totally get that, like, there are rack effects like reverbs and stuff that are better than what you can get for your board. Like, I totally get it, and I totally understand that. And I'm like,
that's right.
Looking at this product and going, if this is that, then why didn't they do it the conventional way so they can market the product effectively?
Right.
Because I don't think these are going to be game changing. Nobody's going to be looking at these UAD pedals and going, this just totally destroys everything, and I'm going to pay $400 for each one. Like, nobody's going to be doing that. Maybe like the Uber Pros. But like bar band guys, they're not. This is not marketed at them. This is marketed at the people that already have all of the mono bags for their guitars. They have the whatever deluxe reverb special edition hand wired thing.
That's right.
And their lumberjack guitar.
And that's right. And they have a beard. They also have not like our beards. They have cool beards. They also have cool. Yeah. Mine is not. This is not because I shave. The thing that makes me laugh a bit is that not only what you're just saying, but those people that they're marketing it probably have already the Strymon stuff.
Yeah.
So why would you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to get rid of my Strymon. It's not going to be nearly as good as this. Oh, come on,
Boss.
Yeah.
I mean, Boss brought out 3 effects pedals that basically slay the Strymon stuff.
Yep.
Both in spec and in program.
Yep.
And Strymon's still out there killing it.
The Strymon diehards, the Strymon diehards are going to keep buying Strymon. They're like the Gibson people who love Gibson, the Fender people who love Fender. Yeah, they're going to be
brand obsession, I guess.
That's right. That loyalty is going to be there. The boogie guys who love boogie. I mean,
there's a lot of dudes out there that will play nothing but Mesa boogies.
That's
I almost bought a 30 the other day.
See?
I mean, I know people are like, oh yeah, well, he's a boogie guy because he's got 2 boogies or whatever. I was going to buy a Dr. Z. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, you're going to buy a train wreck, right?
It just happened to be that, like, I have a boogie deal too, and I decided to get this other amp.
Yeah.
But like,
you were going to buy a Z-Rec, right? You were looking at
I was looking at Z-Rec Junior too.
Yeah.
I was probably going to get what's the big one that everybody wants? The flagship, the Mass.
Oh, the Mass.
Non-reverb. But I decided against it at the last minute because I was going to have to wait, and I'm like, if I'm going to have to wait, like I might as well just get a Mesa Boogie anyway, because I know that I wanted to film more regardless, and I like the amp, so I'm just like, this fills the same niche. And if I don't like it after a year or two, I can always sell it and get a Mass. But I honestly think I'll probably end up keeping this one, just because of the historical significance.
Right.
But I'm not like, I don't have I wanted to point out, I don't have the brand love that some people do. Like, I can go from one place to another at will. I can go buy Gibson right now, and I have no. As much as I dislike what Gibson does, if I find the right one, I reserve the right to do so. I don't care. Like, I remember the episode where I told our listeners I don't care what they think. That's basically like, that's kind of how I feel about this right now.
Yeah.
But I do have my opinions about the companies and the way they're run. I think we all do. But I'm looking at these UAD products versus something else. I just feel like their marketing department just totally wasn't paying attention. It's like,
marketing, engineering. Who did the market analysis on this?
Do you think that? Well, that's my point. Do you think that they did they arbitrarily decided, like, we're going to have $400 pedals? What do we build? Or do you think they went, we have these pedals, what do we price them at?
I think it went that way.
You think they had these pedals, like, what do they price them at? And I think marketing decided what the price is.
I think UAD has drank enough of their own Kool-Aid, and it doesn't help that people like. It doesn't help what you were talking about earlier. That pedal show, right? Dan from that pedal show, and don't get me wrong, I love the guys from that pedal show, but that guy is like, the Universal Audio, greatest thing since sliced bread. And then you got Music is Win. Universal Audio, it's greatest thing since sliced bread.
They're getting them for free. They didn't pay
Tim Pierce for them. Yeah. And so these guys are out there. They're not paying $800 for the cheap one.
While we're on the subject of influencers, the Quad Cortex showed up this week.
Oh, God. And guess who had them?
All
the influencers.
All the influencers have them. But there's people who have paid good money for these that don't have them
still don't have them. That's exactly right. There's people who paid good money that don't have them in their hands, and yet Rhett Shull had one.
All right. Can we like, I because I'm in the gear page right now. I have it up. And the sense of we're on page 607 of posts about the Quad Cortex, starting back when it was announced, and people are like literally going off in this thing about, like, the manual dropped this week. Oh my God, the manual showed up, and it's like, what is wrong with you? Like, what? The manual came out. Oh my gosh, we're getting close to launch. YouTubers have them in their hands. Oh, we're going to get them soon. I would be freaking fuming mad if somebody had one before I did, because I pre-ordered the goddamn thing.
Yeah.
And you know damn well that those YouTubers didn't pay a dime for them either.
Oh, no. They probably have to give them back.
I doubt it.
But you take, like I said, you take Rhett Shull, Pete Thorne, I don't remember who else had them. And I'm like, are you shitting me? The people who ordered them don't have them yet. And you've got them out there at Rhett Shull and these guys. I mean, nothing against Rhett, nothing against Pete, but come on. They don't deserve to get them before the other guys. And I know this. Rhett Shull didn't go, well, give them to me before you get them to all those guys. No, that's not how it happened.
No, and I'm sure, like, they're not responsible for that.
No.
Maybe in that they created the culture that it is. I mean, but like,
no, the people that watch that garbage is what created the culture.
Yeah, they're not directly responsible for it. You know what I mean? Like, they created the content, and then suddenly the company said, well, you're a marketing tool for us.
Honestly, I am so glad we're not one of those channels. Can I take it out of that for just a second?
Yes.
I am so glad I'm not one of those channels. Here's why.
I've always been against it. We've had people reach out to us and I've turned them away.
Every fucking week, I watch everybody from poor Robert from Robert's Guitar Dungeon, which I talked to Robert. We're going to try to get him on a couple weeks, but Robert from Robert's Guitar Dungeon to Pete Thorne to whoever, and everybody, every fucking one of them, you can guess you're going to hear what picks do you use, what strings you use, what this to use, what that to use. Would you cut it out? Would you ask serious fucking questions? You've got the ear of someone who, like Tim Pierce. Here's the guy who played the solo, to X pop song, and you asked him what fucking picks he used. Seriously, that's where you went. That's just so you could say, look at me. Come on.
I'm using the same picks as Tim Pierce.
God, you're not even going to go out and buy them. You don't even care. You just wanted to say, look at me, Tim. Look at me. Notice me.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah,
well,
sure.
That's true.
Sure. I'm just mad about that. But I'll tell you why in a second.
If you're the dude that tunes in to like Tim Pierce and you're like, what strings do you use? So you can buy the same strings. What the hell is wrong with you? Like, not from the perspective of like, oh, I just had to get my voice heard, but like, are you really that insecure that you care what Tim Pierce's strings are?
Ask him about
not that like, so like Josh Smith, like I'm interested. I listen to what he does and like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. I don't ever think like, oh, I'm going to put 13s on my guitar, but I'm watching these things with like Tim Pierce. Like Tim Pierce is not a guitar player I idolize. Yeah. I don't think many people idolize Tim Pierce. And I see that kind of stuff going on in his live streams where I'm like, who are you people?
Yeah.
Like, where did you come from?
Why did you get a life? But you see it, you're on the gear page. You're on other gear pages. I know you are, because I am. And so I'm in a Gibson forum, and every fucking day somebody asks the same fucking stupid questions. I'm looking at a 60s or a 50s. Which one should I get? Play one! For the love of God! Get off your fat ass! Get your fucking head out of your fucking ass and play one. And if you can't make a decision because you're in fucking lockdown, when somebody gives you bad advice, don't go, I got it and I hate it. Shut up! You should have got off your fat ass and gone out and tried it. For the love of Christ and everything that's good in this planet.
If you, I mean, like, I'm just
every fucking week.
Like, it just kills me because you're absolutely right though. Like, how many people on quarantine bought a guitar that was like way out of the price range of what they should have bought? Right, a stimulus check, and then they're pissed off in their guitar forum.
I can't believe I bought
as good as I thought it was gonna be, and it's like, wait a minute. You bought a guitar in quarantine, dipshit. Like, what did you expect?
It's not. It doesn't make me play better.
No shit. I'm really to buy a guitar today. Like, I mean, it's just absolutely asinine.
Oh my God! It's and then it's like, and then I see there's a sunburst and a gold top. Which one should I get? Get the one that you like.
Which one do you like?
Do you ask?
Care what other people think?
Who do you ask what socks you should wear in a fucking morning? Does somebody dress you? Are you that insecure?
Jim, I need to know which one is going to have higher resale value in 2 years when I try to sell it to you.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my God. It's like, and then they're always, and then,
just play them.
Stop
worrying about resale value. If you're buying guitars to collect them, just quit. Yeah. It's not a good investment. Just quit.
Yeah, and if you're buying guitars to collect them, just buy them. Fuck it. You never know which ones. Did you think when I set my freaking Silvertone on fire that it'd be worth as much money as I've seen them go for, or Airline, or whatever it was, way back then? I saw an Airline on freaking Facebook Marketplace, $2,200 or something ridiculous. I'm like, are you shitting me? Who would pay $22 for that piece of garbage?
Jim, do you know why those guitars are worth so much money now? Because so many people did what you did.
Yeah.
Like, if they didn't suck, they wouldn't be worth anything because they got burned and that made them rare.
They're garbage. They're still garbage.
What you don't realize is a lot of these rare guitars that go for a lot of money are crap. They're junk. They're rare because they were mass produced and all the other ones were destroyed.
Well, here's the funny thing. So let's talk about that rare thing for a minute. Okay? Let's just talk about that.
You know what that actually means?
There's people going nuts. I want that 70s Les Paul. I got to get that 70s Les Paul. That Les Paul is going to be better than the one I have. How is it better than the one you have?
Are you talking about the 70s series?
Yes.
Oh, the new '70s series from Gibson.
Well,
All
yeah, the new
'70s models.
ones.
Oh,
Here's
they're
a
so
guitar
stupid.
based on guitars that were crap when it
Yeah, here's a
came out.
guitar. Well, that's like Fender doing the '70s because they do their '70s reissue Strats and stuff. And like, it's always boggled my mind why you would want to get a guitar from an era that like was not liked. And yes, there are '70s Gibsons that are good, like just like
Yeah,
anything else.
oh,
If you
yeah,
get
of
if you
course.
get the right one, but it just seems like that's just a weird thing to model your guitar on. And
I
this
know.
whole thing with this whole obsession right now, I've watched in the last 3 years, mini humbuckers. Everybody wants mini humbuckers.
Oh God, yeah.
Why? Why the fuck do you want mini humbuckers? They sound bad.
They're not.
Like they're not the same thing as like a PAF
No, or a
even like
P90.
yeah. I mean,
No,
they're just a smaller humbucker,
the
like with
Gibson
different materials,
Deluxe.
so they can make them smaller.
Yeah, the
What
Firebirds.
can you?
Yeah, yeah. See, the thing is that we've come into this world where it's like um, uh, there people have this need to have something. You weren't even born in the 70s, right? Which means that most of the people in your age, and I'm making this comically, by the way, most of the people your age weren't born in the 70s, which means a lot of these hipsters weren't born in the 70s. But I'll be good goddamned if they're not searching for 70s guitars. Listen, guys, I was born, I did live, and I did play Les Pauls, and they weren't all that good. It took me a long time to find one I liked, and then it hung on a wall. A lot of people didn't like it. It hung on a wall in a little shop in upstate New York for a year while I freaking saved money to buy it. Actually, more than a year. And so they're not that good. They weren't that good to begin with. And you take, let's look at the one that's really blowing my fucking mind right now, which is the one that's based on Adam Jones's guitar. Like $6,000 for the cheap one, or $8,000 for the cheap one, and $10,000 for the expensive one, or $12,000. Adam Jones didn't pay $12,000 for his guitar, guys. He didn't, and he found it, and he fucking modded it, and he uses it because whether he modded it or not, he uses it because he liked that one. You might not like that one. Adam Jones did. You might not get up in the morning and want to wear one orange sock and one blue sock, but maybe Adam Jones does. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? He has his own reasons for loving what he loves. Maybe he likes ketchup on his eggs, and maybe it's hot sauce, and maybe it's nothing. You should learn to love what you love.
Yeah, figure out what it is that you like, and stop chasing stuff that you don't.
Because you're chasing. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I got the red unicorn back. That's the neck of the red unicorn sitting back there, and the neck is twisted, so the guitar is basically toast, right? And I'm just trying to play around with it and have some fun with it because it's like it's not gonna kill it, and quite frankly, I can play it around the house and not care,
Yep.
So I adjusted it today so I could get it playable, and it's playable. But intonation is terrible because the neck's twisted. But it's funny because I was chasing the Les Paul thing, and we even talked about it, I think, on the last episode where it was like, oh, this is a guitar that I'll really like to play and whatever, and I'd like to get that back because then I would like to see if the body shape would fit and whatever. And I played it today, and I was like, yeah, it's a cool sound. I don't know if it's what I'm after. I'm listening to it, I'm like, you know what? I'm not really all that into this now. And I'm doing an about face, and I'm realizing sometimes you just gotta say, that's not gonna work for me. Even though I think Les Pauls are cool, it's not what I'm chasing. It's just not what I'm chasing. So it's kind of making me reevaluate some things, but I think you can go down those rabbit holes, just like those guys in those forums that are buying the 60s and going, I should have bought the 50s. And it's like, you're chasing something, man. Stop.
Maybe a Les Paul wasn't what you wanted.
What you actually want,
Yeah.
Maybe you want a Flying V. Maybe you don't want a Gibson at all. Maybe you want a Fender. I mean, who knows what you want? You have to find it out for yourself. And doing that during a pandemic is not the right time to be doing it. And I know we have people on the show that work for music stores and whatever, and that's where I'm like, don't do that. Like, I don't want to be the guy that's like, hey, go off and buy an expensive guitar because you got a stimulus check.
Yeah.
Don't do anything with that kind of money until you're sure of what you want. Believe me, I have lots of debt that I'm trying to pay off because I've made a lot of mistakes like that. Yeah. I would highly recommend you use your brain instead of your wallet. And that means maybe now don't buy a guitar during quarantine. Maybe buy a pedal and hold on to the rest of your money, and maybe you'll get something later. I keep saying it's quarantine. We're not on quarantine, right? We're just sheltering in place or whatever you want to call it,
right?
Until this thing blows over,
right?
But like I know people who, and believe me, I bought a cabinet, I bought a Captor X, I bought what else did I buy? I bought several things during quarantine. I think I bought both my cabinets during quarantine. I bought this one early. I bought this one a couple months ago. I bought that a couple months ago. I got pedals on my board and all this other stuff that I bought during quarantine. I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, how stupid am I? Like, going to the store to risk buying something. I'm like a moron.
I was working at the store to risk buying something. What are you, crazy? I got that and that and that and that and
yeah. I mean, it's like sometimes you got to take a step back and realize, hey, maybe quarantine is about doing more with what you have.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I've made that promise to myself. I'm not making it to you guys. I'm making it to myself. I've made it to myself that I am going
still flying proud over here. He hasn't bought anything music like oriented.
Nope.
Unless that mic stand counts, but
I did get this because I was sick and tired of. So guys,
this other one was.
Let me show you what was on. Let me show you what was on my desk. Hold on. I'm gonna grab it real quick, and it weighs like 12 pounds. This is crazy. It's made by. So this is what was sitting on my desk, right? And this bass. I mean, you can't feel it. It's Gator Frameworks. It's really good. Now it's a mic stand for the amp. But let me tell you something, man. This thing weighs a ton, and of course, look at how much space it took up. And,
yeah. Well, I have a boom that's sitting next to me in a tripod, so.
Well, yeah, because yours broke. But yeah,
so I just haven't replaced it. It's been like 6 or 9 months now.
I'll tell you who to call. But because I got a good deal.
I know who to call.
Yeah, he'll give you a good deal. Well, you got a guy too. So
I got many guys. they know me, unfortunately.
But yeah, I mean, I got my Captor X, just like you. I got my Captor X. But on quarantine, I bought this Fender Twin. I bought that Les Paul. I bought the. No, the Les Paul was bought before quarantine.
No, the Les Paul was
before quarantine.
But you got the ES 335. You got,
and this was before quarantine. So yeah, the ES 335, your Aerodyne, the Tone Master might have been right before.
No, it was after.
It was right after. It was within a week. And the Spark was ordered during quarantine. That was dumb. So yeah, I mean. It's just crazy. I think that, and it's silly. I have owned 16 or 18, maybe 20 Les Pauls in my lifetime. I'm 56 years old. That's too many. And I've owned old ones. I've owned new ones. I've owned relatively new ones, relatively old ones. It depends on the time. Everyone I've owned though wasn't that old when I had it.
Yeah,
it became older.
Just buying them new or slightly used,
Yeah, and I was chasing something. I did find, but I got to be honest with you. I've had it a couple times.
Yeah,
so that was dumb.
I know you did because you had that one
that gold top
when we started the show, the gold top, and then you let it go, and I was like,
"What an idiot!
What?"
Yeah, what an idiot. There's two of them. I've let go in the last 6 years that I went, what the fuck was I thinking? One was a custom and one was the gold top. And I easily could have had both of them still. So yeah, dumb move. And dumb move, admittedly, walk on the rocks that I stumbled on, people. Just realize that these lines in this face, these are from freaking making massive stupid mistakes.
Everybody makes
I
dumb
sold my
decisions.
old Strat, bought this one, and I don't think this one's any better than my old one. My old one was $500. So you know what? It just freaking get what you like, get what you get what you like, and just live with it. That's why these guys are here. I mean, the four on the top, well, the SG is actually over here, but the four on that top row, they're not going anywhere. They're just not going anywhere, and it's just because I don't have to search for them anymore. But the point is, and you have stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, like looking at my S500 over here, and it's just a guitar that's not going anywhere. Like I've never had a thought like where I was like, how much I could get for that. My Kiesel's sitting over here, and actually was in the shower today. I was like, should I even keep that thing? I was thinking in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna keep it. But I'm like, I'm just like, I shouldn't have bought that. I should have bought something more like my Strat.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that that's probably going to steer me next time. Is like, I kind of know what I like, and there's no reason to really tamper with that.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's an interesting journey. You know, I'm going to play a bunch of stuff, and
I could see you with a Sir. I could see you with a Tom Anderson.
Well, that was something I was talking about with my wife. Was like, you know, that would be an investment instrument. It's something I have to get her like approval to do, and because it's like they're $3,000. I mean, they're not. You're not getting one for less than that, especially if you buy new.
Want. Yeah,
and yeah, for what I want, I'm going to spend. So,
or you could, I could see you
have to be the one guitar. You know what I mean? Like, and if I was to do that, that's got to be after a house. That's got to be after debts disappear. That's got to be after, there's a lot of things that have to happen to make that happen. So using it as fuel is helpful to me. And like, that's the one thing I wanted to point out, because I know I've had some conversation with some show visitors and stuff. And I'm like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And it's like, I want everybody to realize when I say that, I don't mean like right away. Like I mean long term, because right now I'm more content than I've ever been. And I'm actually kind of kicking myself because some of the things that I've learned about my gear that I have right now are things that could have applied to gear I have sold and probably could have been content 2 or 3 years ago, maybe even longer, or before I had the Helix.
Yeah. I'm going to say this, now that I have the Captor, because the Captor was really the last
it's the missing link, man.
It was the missing string. And the only reason
that thing, you're like, holy crap. Yeah, like, why didn't I buy this before?
The only reason I didn't have, the Captor X that we have is a relatively new product. It's not.
No, I know, but it's like, why didn't somebody have this already? Like, why didn't this exist?
These things.
The Torpedo Live would have been the other thing that we could have done.
Yep.
So,
yeah. But anyway, what I was saying is, so I have the Captor X only to record. And if I wasn't recording it, if I wasn't doing the show, if I wasn't, doing the thing which I've been recording today, and I'll be doing when I get done. There's nothing that I would go, and it's funny because every year before this, and you know that because you saw me last year, and the year before, every year at NAMM, I'm like, oh, I want that. This year I'm not. I mean,
products you're interested in.
Yeah,
right?
The Chrissy Hind is cool, and I like the look of it and everything else, but. Do I really need a Telecaster? I just don't. And the fact is that I'm doing everything I need to do. Now, yes, somebody might go, well, you need a Telecaster to do this. Well,
you don't need it. You can do everything you want on a Strat. You can do everything you want on an SG.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
And honestly, like I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, you need a Les Paul for. No, listen, Les Pauls are a very narrow range of music that people have used them historically to play. Like blues and classic rock and hard rock. And if you get to like jazz, like there's not a ton of people playing Les Pauls in jazz. Yeah. Now I know I'm going to get like 50 million emails, but
there was this guy named Les Paul that did. But yeah,
you could find guys in jazz playing Strats too. Yeah, you're going to find, but I'm just saying that's not predominantly what you use that for.
Right.
So you've got all your bases covered. I mean, you don't even need. You could right now, Jim. You could have your SG, that 335, and your Strat, and you have everything you need.
Yep.
Like, that's the kind of the way I look at that. Like, Les Paul, superfluous. You need a bass because you play bass, but like people have this attitude, this mentality that's like, well, I got to play the guitar that was on the record, doing it this way. And I just like, you saw Mike last night on the live stream.
All night long, one guitar.
Yep, one guitar and one rig, one amp, and really not a whole lot of sounds. I mean, he was doing different things in the pedal board all night, but like when you see that, it makes you realize it ain't really about how close you get to the record. Now, there are certain parts he nails, like he does the the Run Like Hell delay and stuff like that. But those are very specific things for those specific songs.
Yep.
But he didn't have to change his amp. He didn't have to change his guitar to do it. And I mean, he's playing stuff from Jeff Beck playing on Les Pauls to David Gilmour playing Strats, and he's doing it all on a Strat with Zex coils. And like, that should be the realization for anybody when you go see a band where the guy never even bothers to change his guitar and they get through the whole set, nobody's bitching. That should be a wake-up call for everybody in the room. You don't have to do any of that. Work on your playing more than you do researching gear, for the love of God. I mean, Jim and I do it because partially the show. For me, actually, it's mostly the show. And boredom, especially during quarantine. Like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, hey, I wonder what these go for on Reverb. No intention of buying one. Just wanted to see what they go for. Or just to look at pretty pictures. Yeah. And that's another thing. Is like, I like to look at the pictures sometimes and see like old guitars or cool finishes. And, doesn't mean that's necessarily that I might want to own, but it's entertainment. I'm into guitars. Like, it's entertainment. And I think a lot of people get this idea in their head that like, if you're looking at them, you must buy them.
Want them. Yeah.
No, you don't have to. You don't have to. You can window shop. It's fine.
Yeah, that is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. It makes me, it makes me look at things differently. There was a couple of years ago. Let's say this. A couple of years ago, I said, "Oh, I'd love to have a custom shop Les Paul or a custom shop PRS," and I would put it in a glass case. Now, I don't have that one.
Why?
Anymore. I don't have that desire anymore. That's what I'm saying.
If I bought a VOS, Jim, I'd play it.
Yeah.
And I ain't
fucking
kidding. I'll take it to every goddamn bar gig. I just don't care. I bought that guitar to play it.
Yeah.
Like, I know there are people out there like, you couldn't take that to a gig. Hell yeah, I could. I don't care if it gets knocked off the stand. I'll have a headstock fixed, and it'll be like a real Gibson.
Yeah, bullshit. I'll take it. Yeah. Yeah, it'd be like everybody else's.
What the hell's the problem? Like, I don't understand. And
do you know how many famous freaking Les Pauls have headstock brakes? Come on.
Yeah, good luck fencing a VOS. Like, good luck with that. Let me know how that goes for you. You better believe I'll have insurance on it, and I'll have the serial number on it. But if it gets stolen, I'm not going to cry. I'm going to go back to Gibson and be like, I'll buy another one. That's what's funny about a lot of this stuff is like people act like everything's a collector's item, and especially above the $3,000 market. And I'm like, no, there is no such thing as a collector's guitar. As far as I'm concerned, I know people collect guitars, but like I look at it as this. There are old guitars, and the old guitars may be better, and so they go for higher prices, and they've also been speculated on by collectors. And so I look at it as there really aren't any collector's guitars because there's no collector's market. People act like, oh, the 59 Les Pauls are going for what are they like $250,000 now. It's like that's a collector's instrument. You realize there's less than 3,000 of those in existence. Like that's why that is a $200,000 guitar because there is a collector's market for that. But if you go look at 57 Strats, you can get those for under $20,000 all day long.
Well, here's part of the problem that PRS freaking fed right into is that lunar sky or lunar tri or whatever the hell lunar moon unit Zappa thing that
market.
Yeah,
they're creating a site, and there is a collector market because they allowed it to exist.
And the people who bought it, you didn't have to buy it. Ooh, look at that color. Right. Just say, look at that color.
Did, right when they were doing the shows in the 90s and really the mid 80s, late 80s, because a lot of people say the vintage guitar market didn't exist until 1987. For whatever reason, like 1987, people had money and they were going out and they were buying guitars like right and left, and they were just putting them in cases and sticking them in their house. Yep. And then that was when the idea of the investment guitar happened, which was actually a thing. We're talking about buying 57 Strats and Les Pauls you know, 58,
Yep.
360 Les Pauls, and being like, this is our, you know, 57, 58, 59 Les Pauls. These are our collector's guitars.
Yep.
And I still don't, I can't fathom
the bubble will
market.
break on that.
Oh, I know. That's why I'm like, even now, people keep buying these things and they're driving the market up. Jim, I about shit a brick when I saw that the Les Pauls were going for $250. I was like, $250,000. Yeah. You're kidding me.
Some of them are upwards of 300,000, and that's with no what's the word I wanted? Provenance.
Yeah, like no, right. There's no because there is no factory guide of like how many serial numbers or whatever. Like they were trying to buy that because they don't have that, and they know there's a bunch of fakes out there, and they'd love to invalidate them.
That's right.
Because then that drives the price of the VOS up. But I was thinking about this the other day, like all these collector's items that have occurred in the music industry. I don't think they're ever going to bottom out to zero, but I could see a day when like the bursts are back down to 100,000 and a 57 Strat is like 10 grand. I could see that happening.
Yep.
I don't know when it happens. And I think that it will largely be dictated by the fact that at some point those guitars will no longer be cool.
They won't.
Some form of music, which look at gent. Like look at the whole like gent metal scene. Nobody's playing vintage guitars in gent metal.
And no guitar commands that kind of price. They just won't. Because nobody, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, no one is going to be going, I can't gent on this new guitar, whatever that new guitar is.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to say, oh, I can't buy a new Solar or a new, I don't care if Ibanez, RG,
whatever,
RG or Prestige.
Whatever.
Yeah. Maybe they're upwards of 3,500 by then. But still, that's going to be the top end of the guitar because they could still gent on it. And if you think about it, how many more Joe Bonamassas are there going to be? How many more blues lawyers can we have?
Well, that's my point. Is I think at some point the market, it's not going to disappear, but it's going to bottom out.
Right.
And we just haven't hit it yet. And actually, there's a kid, and I say he's a kid. Guy's got to be like under 27 years old, and he's got a YouTube channel, and he's got like 10 50 Strats. And you're sitting there going, how can he have 10 50 Strats? Like at 5,000 or 10,000 a piece. No, number one, I went trust fund, right? He also lives in this shitty apartment. It's his backdrop for his videos. And you can see his cabinets are all like worn out and like need to be painted and shit. And it's funny. It's funny because it's like, yeah, that I could totally see myself doing that, right? But I'm also kind of like looking at the situation. I'm going, dude, you got like $50,000 wrapped up in guitars. Where's your priorities? Like, you got no investments for the future. If you think your guitars are an investment, you're lying to yourself.
If you think somebody's not going to figure out where you live, and that's like having all your money under the mattress. Seriously.
I mean, I don't know where he lives. He may not actually live in an apartment, but it looks like an apartment.
No, right? I'm just saying that. Yeah. I'm just saying.
It's right. You're putting these on parade, and I'm sure he's selling them. He's trying to do it Trogley, right? Like he plays them and then he puts them on reverb.
Well, that's a smart move.
Which is fine because he's trying to look for the right guitars for his gig, is what he's doing, and that's all fine and good. Which, by the way, he plays some nutso amplifiers in this like little condo situation he has, like 15-inch speaker Showmans, cranked all the way up to 10. I'm going, your landlord doesn't kill you, like not evict you, doesn't show up to your property and have you murdered. I mean. I would be surprised if your windows are still intact. Anyway, I hesitate to think that it'll change the industry when it bottoms out.
Yeah.
And this is what I was really going to point out though, is like, so right now, if you want a master built 57 Strat, right? Because it was about $24,000. I think that's what they're going for right now. I can verify that. But if you're going to master built one, you're going to pay about $5,000 for it. So if we Stratocaster, so they're about $4,000 to $5,000 for a Closet Queen version. I'm looking for an actual real one. Let's just do price high to low. That's a
Can't
fast
you
way to
pick
put
the actual year? It's hard to.
it. You can. They go for so. That's not a real 57 custom shop. So 8,000-9,000 for these different custom shop like special one offs. There's a Todd Krause, there's a John Cruz. Just show me a real 57. Like, what the hell? You tell me you don't have any? Look at the sold listings. That's where probably we should be looking at anyway. High to low. These are all like, here's a Wildwood special run. Anyway, last time I saw one go was for like 24,000, and it had everything all original. Guitar was in decent shape. It wasn't totally thrashed, and I have to imagine that if the market on those comes down to 15 or 10, that the custom shop ceases to exist, because $5,000 for the the real one, or the custom shop versus the real one at 10,000, like, custom shop doesn't need to exist anymore.
Yeah.
And same thing with Fender, or for Gibson, like, except for the VOS, the 60, because the Burst is really the only, that's the other thing that's puzzling to me. The Burst is really the only Gibson that commands those kinds of prices at vintage
That's
levels.
right. Yep.
Like
you could buy
a 67, or not 67, like a 59-ish 335, like from that time period, because I don't think they were made in 59, right? I think they started 61 or something like that. The 335.
No, they started 58.
Is that what it was? 58?
Yeah, 55 is the reason that everybody gets off, is because that's when the movie happened and they didn't exist in 1955.
Yeah,
so they didn't exist until 58.
58, the 335 happens, right? And like, you can go buy a 58 335 for like 12 grand or 20 grand.
Yeah, it's not that.
They're not astronomical.
Not compared to the, what do you call it?
Not
It's funny because you can get a Gibson Les Paul custom in those years for less money than you would pay for those bursts.
I know. I was getting there. I'm like, you can buy any other guitar from the lineup. Some of them are very affordable. If you want like a Melody Maker or a Les Paul Jr. or something from that time period, you're looking at like, $3 grand, $4 grand. Some of them are $6. It just depends on what you're looking at.
Yeah,
even
depends on if it was
like 61 to 64 SGs, they're under 12 grand.
Yeah.
I mean, so this whole mythology that vintage guitars are totally unaffordable. Yes, they are unaffordable for the average player, but if the market bottoms out, things change, and those guitars could become, and maybe they're not maybe it's like stocks, right? Like, they're not really being speculated on, so they'll stay the same. But I can't imagine that they're not going to lose some of that hump because of you really want a 57, but you'll buy this instead, so it's worth an extra $1,000 kind of thing. I don't know. I think I'm hopeful on that. I think that I also think we're going to get to the point where we have production relic guitars that are very good, and I think it's not very far off. With CNC being what it is, that's probably in the next 5 years you're going to start seeing some real relicking at prices under $1,000.
Yep, I already seeing the Chrissy Hines, which is at 1,500. The relic job they did was actually pretty decent. Great, no, but decent. Yeah. But here's what's funny. So my birth year, I'm 56 years old, right? I'll be 57 this year. So my birth year guitar for Stratocaster only goes for like 20,000, give or take. There's a Closet Queen looking one that's 37,000, but that's the asking price. But most of them are asking right around $22,000 to $20,000. Now, when I put in that perspective, that's a 50-something-year-old guitar. There are people clamoring for that stupid Silver Sky that are willing to pay $6,000, $8,000, $10,000 for that freaking Lunar Pride model.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Come on.
It's nuts.
That's bananas. It's the same exact guitar. Go buy the white one on the wall at the local shop. I'm just saying. But yeah, we've turned a corner for 2.5 hours, I think. No, we're almost there. But yeah, the point is that I think we both in agreement with this. It's not. You've got gear. John Bott joined me in the year of no gear, and believe me, he almost broke it. He ordered a pedal and returned it. He didn't even take it out of the box. He ordered it and returned it. I got to give him props to you, John.
All right, John. Like,
yeah, good job.
congratulations.
Because
you're a better man than I.
he texted me. He was all excited. He goes, I kind of let him down because I think I let him down because he goes, I'm so excited. I just bought a new pedal. It's on the way. And I said, yeah, I don't care. I can't get excited about it. And I don't remember if it was a mod pedal or a reverb pedal. And he goes, but it's this reverb. And I go, yeah, it's just not a reverb, man. I said, do you really want that reverb? And he got it in. He goes, you know what? You were right. I just returned it. I didn't even open the box. Why do I want a reverb? I'm not unhappy with the reverb I have. I think what happens is we get unhappy, not with what we have. We get unhappy with how we're using what we have. Does that make sense?
I think that's part of it. And I think we also, if you're anything like me, you get excited about new things because you see possibilities in it.
Yep.
And if you don't connect with it, then it's like, well, that was a waste. And that's what happens a lot of the time. Like, I'll buy something and I'll be like, I'm really excited about this and this is going to be so much potential. And then I get home and like, yeah, I do something with it, but I'm like, you know what? This is really not all that necessary. I went back and forth about buying a synth pedal this year.
Yeah.
Or in 2020. And I was like, I really want to get one. And like, I can still see some uses for it. And I very, very well end up getting an Atreides at some point. But I held off, and it was because it was like, I'm just bored. Like, that's really what it is. I'm bored. I want to get something new to just dick around with. And like, I don't need that. What I need to do is spend some money on some lessons or to go and like just play, just play backing tracks or something and stop worrying about gear. Like, I cannot stress this enough. We are borderline a gear podcast half the time. And I want to tell our listeners, stop worrying about gear. Really stop. Like, it's nice to know what's out there and it's available to you so that when you do need some gear, like, you know what's there. But the reality is you're going to get a lot more mileage out of just playing your damn instrument.
I have an idea. I have an idea for a new segment. This is totally, you tell me if this is a good idea. From now on, what we do is we have a new segment called "What Did You Learn About the Stuff You Already Have?" What did you learn to do with the shit you've already got?
Can we do it for this week? Because I already have one.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So I'm ashamed to admit this. I'm a fuzz faceaholic.
Go ahead. Yep.
Hi, I'm David, and I have a problem. And so I've been using fuzz faces on and off for probably the better part of 20 years.
Yep.
I got into fuzz faces because I was into Eric Johnson, and I was like, oh, he used one. And I didn't really even know like what he was using it for. I didn't have good enough ears at that time to tell when he was turning it on and off. And like most of his sound is probably coming from his tube screamer and his Chandler tube driver. But so I got a fuzz face. I got my first fuzz face probably, I would say I was probably still in high school. And I didn't have it very long because I thought it sounded like shit and I sold it. And then I just kind of went down this journey of like buying different ones over the years. I got into Philip Stacey, and I found out he was using a pedal called the Ox Fuzz, which is a fuzz face handmade by this guy I knew in Canada. So I reached out to that guy and I got one. I had it I think I had that fuzz for about 3 years. And like one day I got to the point where I was like, this thing won't even do unity gain. Like, I need to dump this thing. Now, we'll go back there in a second. So then I had, the various Jim Dunlop mini fuzz faces in between, which are great pedals, by the way. Like, I like all of them. They're collectible as shit. And I know I said don't collect things, but if you're going to collect things, collect pedals. That's a good thing to collect. Because you can have, hey, I'm doing this gig. I want this one.
Interchangeable quickly.
And especially with like fuzz faces, they're all different. I know that they say like, whoa, the red ones all sound the same now. The current red ones are all germanium, right? And then of course there's the red with the white knobs, but that's a whole other thing. But they're like, oh, you can just use all these. Listen, take the time to learn to use your fuzz face, and I'll tell you why. So I've been using it on 10. I did those fuzz facts videos for the show. They're always on 10, right? And I'm using the volume knob to control everything, because that's the best part about that pedal is that like a micrometer move on the knob, you're clean. And you're like, what the hell? It's like having a second channel. And the guitars I use have like a bass and a treble control. They're passive, obviously, PTB tone controls and GNL. So I'll roll back the bass knob to get the fuzz to clean up, because that also helps too. So I had some, I was working with my Sunface. I was just like putting my board together and changing things out, trying some new things, and like messing with pedal order and all this. And what I realized was, and it's just bonkers. I got to do a video because I got to show it. I watched James Santiago's video talking about fuzz faces, and James Santiago says, he's got a silicon fuzz sitting there, and he says, if you roll back the fuzz control until the fuzz gets fat sounding and darker, that's really where you want it set. And then he's like, then you can put it into a tube screamer or some other drive pedal and get this big fat full featured fuzz sound that isn't like overly compressed. And basically it's the Eric Johnson thing, right? Like that's kind of what it sounds like.
Right.
So I'm like, why the hell would you ever dial your fuzz control back? Like, even when I'm watching this, I'm like, what? And now I have, of course, done this. Like, this is not rocket science, right? So I'm like, I've run it halfway. I've run with the fuzz knob all the way down and the volume all the way up, and like all these different combinations and permutations over the years. The fuzz face never cleans up. You can turn the fuzz all the way down; it'll still be a fuzz. So I started playing around with it. And what I realized was he's absolutely right. There is a very specific position on the pedal where the fuzz knob, and they're all different, where you're going to get that optimal setting for the fuzz knob. And think of it like tuning, right? And then the volume knob is you set it at unity gain or slightly higher. Yep. And just run it into whatever. And like I did that with my King of Tone, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, what have I been doing? And then I was like, oh, I'll put it on the clean channel map. It'll probably sound like shit there. And I put it on the clean channel map. I'm like, oh my God, this isn't ripping my head off.
Yeah.
Like, it's not super bright and like scratching at my eyes and the back of my ears. And I realized, like, in that moment, I was like, wow, you're an idiot. You've been playing these pedals for probably 15 plus years, and you never understood how they worked. And like all of a sudden it just all came into view, and I was like, what the hell is wrong with me? And so now I reordered my board. My fuzz is not the end of my chain anymore. It's right next to my King of Tone so that I can use it as a gain stage. Probably the predominant sound, like for boosting on my board, is just turn the fuzz face on and like let it rip, because it's not the way it's set up now. It doesn't make the amp sound less gainy. It actually makes it browner, which is weird. But it does change a little bit of the saturation characteristics. But when I turn on the King of Tone, all of a sudden it becomes a ripping fuzz, and it sounds great. I'm like, I've just been missing out on this for years. I was never able to get it to sound right. So now, why I'm kicking my ass about the aux fuzz, is because that pedal probably sounded freaking great. Because I remember when the gain control was maxed out, then it wouldn't reach unity volume. So if I'd rolled the gain knob back a little bit and probably found that sweet spot, I probably could have gotten better than unity volume.
Yep.
And it probably would have been great because it was fine when it wasn't like fully saturated. So
you definitely need to do that. You definitely need to do that video, because that's interesting.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's. I even showed my wife, because my wife, like, she knows what the fuzz face sounds like. She hears me playing them all the time, and she comes in here and I said, listen to this, and I kicked on the fuzz face, and she goes, it's not what the hell? I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, this is awful. I'm just like, talk about getting kicked in the nuts.
Yeah,
something I thought I knew. And like, I was so audacious that I decided I was going to do a video series about him. And I'm like, still learning new shit about him. Where like, that's an obvious one. Everyone who uses a fuzz face should know that shit. Like, that shouldn't even be a discussion. So you can still learn new stuff about gear. I mean, that's a pedal in a circuit that I've been using for 20 plus years, and I just figured out how to use it right.
Well, next week I'll talk about the thing I learned about my SG. And I'm going to save that for next week.
Do you have, just out of curiosity, have you ever experimented with the 50s tone control out? Like the 50s tone controls? Well, so you know that Gibson has like multiple wirings, right? So they have like the old school wiring, and then they have the like the ones where the volumes are separate.
Right.
There's ones like they bleed, and I forget what they call them, but like I have all my when I do Gibson guitars, I have them 50s wired.
Yeah,
because they sound different. So
yeah, that one's 50s wired. I don't know what the standard is wired,
right,
but yeah,
right.
the SG. I mean,
I'm not going
so
to go too deep on this. Jim's got next week, so
yeah, I'll do next week. I'm going to talk about my SG. I'm going to put a little thing together for it. I've been playing it for the last few days to try to get something different. I wanted to get something that wasn't ACDC. It was, something bigger and badder. So, all right. Well,
no.
that's it. That's it for the week, I think.
Yeah, I have been David.
I've been Jim. So we've been
Practical Guitarist.
Cue the music.
Yeah, I think so.